May 18th, 2020, and call upon Councilmember Bob Pfeiffer for the pledge.
Thank you, Mayor. Would everyone join me in a moment of silent reflection? And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Rush, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Marriott.
Here.
Councilmember Simpson.
Here.
Very good. Next, we have the approval of the minutes of May 4th, 2020. If anyone would raise their hand on the screen, if indeed you have any changes or corrections. Ms. Ford.
I'd like to approve the minutes as amended.
Well, the minutes, we don't, if there's no changes to it, we don't take a motion on them.
There is a
Well,
change to these minutes.
Oh, there is a change. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended. I'll do a roll call of the council. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marriott?
Aye.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. That passes 7-0. Thank you. Next, we have some recognitions and communications. The first one will be Mayor Pro Tem Dot Miller.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a proclamation for Poppy Month. So this I can't even say the words. This proclamation designates May as Poppy Month in Arvada. The red Flanders poppy was described as a flower of remembrance by a World War I colonel who wrote in pencil on a page torn from his dispatch book a verse describing how the poppies grew among row on row of graves of soldiers who had died on the Flanders battlefields located in western Belgium in northern France. In 1923, unemployed and disabled veterans began to produce artificial poppies. From this beginning, the Flanders Field Poppy promotion was born, and since that time, proceeds raised to the promotion of the Flanders Field Poppy have been used exclusively for the benefit of disabled and needy veterans and the widows, widowers, and orphans of deceased veterans. Following this meeting, the proclamation will be sent to American Legion Auxiliary Wilmore Richer Unit 161, and I'll read the proclamation right now. Whereas the sacrifices of those who have lost their lives, their health, and their livelihood as a result of their military service are rightly the concern of all citizens. And whereas the annual sale of poppies by the American Legion Auxiliary Unit 161 officers offers an opportunity for the people of this community to express their solicitude for those unfortunate persons who have made more than their share of the cost of freedom. And whereas the proceeds of this worthy fundraising campaign are used exclusively for the benefit of the disabled and needy veterans and the widows and orphans of deceased veterans in the desire to honor the dead by helping the living. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Arvada, Colorado, that the month of May be designated Poppy Month in Arvada. The Arvada City Council encourages all residents to participate in Poppy Month and to wear a poppy as mute evidence of our gratitude to the men and women of this country who have risked their lives or lost their lives in fulfilling their obligations as American citizens. Arvada City Council recognizes the merits of the American Legion Auxiliary Unit 161, dated this 18th day of May, 2020, and signed by the Mayor and members of City Council.
This is where we need a clap feature on the.
There is one. Or there was on the last one, sorry.
Okay. Next, I'll call upon Councilmember Bob Pfeiffer for a proclamation for Mental Health Month.
Thank you. And also, I miss giving our dollar for the poppy seeds. That's
Yes.
the unfortunate part of being remote. This month of May 2020 is Mental Health Month. This year's campaign, Tools to Thrive, will provide practical tools that everyone can use to improve their mental health and increase resiliency regardless of the situation they are dealing with. We now believe that these tools, even those that may not or may need to be adapted for the short term because of COVID-19 and social distancing, will be more useful than ever. Following this meeting, the proclamation will be sent to the Jefferson Center. So I'll read the proclamation. Whereas good mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and emotional well-being and promotes a healthy community, and whereas 1 in 5 people in our community experience a mental health condition each year, and 8.1% of individuals in our community experience substance use disorder each year, and whereas the stigma against mental health conditions and substance use disorder prevents many people from accessing care. And whereas when mental health problems and substance use disorders are detected early and treated, people can recover and maintain a healthy and independent life. And whereas research shows that animal companionship, humor, spirituality, recreation, social connections, and work life balance can help all Americans protect their health and well being. And whereas the city of Arvada is dedicated to improving the health and well-being of its citizens by ending the stigma and focus on the integrated role of mental health in our lives. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Arvada, Colorado, that May 2020 be designated Mental Health Month, and we all call upon all to recommit our communities and resources to increase awareness and understanding of mental health, providing the appropriate and accessible services for all, and making mental health a priority. It's dated this 18th day of May 2020, signed by the Mayor and all of City Council.
And I see we have Amy Miller with us from Jefferson Center for Mental Health. Ms. Miller, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, my name is Amy Miller. I am the Senior Services Manager at Jefferson Center for Mental Health. And on behalf of the board, staff, and clients of Jefferson Center, thank you for issuing this proclamation and recognizing May as Mental Health Month in the city of Arvada. The past 2 months have tested us all in so many ways, and yet we've demonstrated our ability to adapt as a community, as well as shown our incredible strength and resilience in the face of immense difficulty. And now more than ever, mental health care and substance use treatment are critical for people to not only surviving this crisis, but thriving in our new normal. As you mentioned, I am with Jefferson Center for Mental Health. At Jefferson Center, each year we offer mental health and substance use treatment, wellness services, and other supportive services to people of all ages from all walks of life. We also had to adapt quickly by developing innovative ways to provide remote care by phone and video for new and existing clients, ensuring that no one falls through the cracks during this time of uncertainty. And I'm proud to say that we have helped thousands of community members maneuver some of life's toughest challenges. 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health or substance use disorder over the course of their lives. Behavioral health disorders are more common than cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Without treatment, these disorders can affect a person's ability to hold a job, care for a family, or have hope that things will get better. Yet less than half of people with a diagnosable mental illness will seek treatment, either because of the stigma associated with mental illness or because they don't know where to turn. And that's why your support of Mental Health Month is so important. Together, we will increase awareness and reduce the stigma often associated with mental health and substance use disorders. And when the stigma fades, more people will seek care and our community will become stronger and healthier. And Jefferson Center truly values the support of the city of Arvada. If anyone you know needs support, please encourage them to contact Colorado Crisis Services at 844-493-8255, or to contact us at Jefferson Center by calling 303-425-0300 or visiting our website at jcmh.org. Thank you again for recognizing Mental Health Month and for supporting Jefferson Center. We couldn't do all of this important work without you.
Well, Ms. Miller, now more than ever. So certainly your Your entity's resources and talents are crucial as we start marching on the path of recovery. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very good. Next, I'll call upon Councilmember Nancy Ford for a National Public Works Week proclamation.
Thank
Near
you,
and dear
Mayor.
to her heart, I'm sure.
Very dear to my heart. Thanks, Mayor. The theme for the 2020 National Public Works Week is the rhythm of public works. Every community has a rhythm, a heartbeat that reflects its essence and tempo of life. Arvada's infrastructure work system keeps Arvada's rhythm moving by providing an orchestra of services in transportation, water, wastewater, and stormwater treatment, public buildings and spaces, and right-of-way management. The infrastructure work system provides the harmony needed for collaboration with all the stakeholders in capital projects, infrastructure solutions, and quality of life services. Today, we celebrate the achievements of our infrastructure work system, including receiving full accreditation by the American Public Works Association for the second time. The purpose of accreditation is to promote excellence in the operation and management of a public works agency, its programs, and employees. The Public Works and Utilities departments are dedicated to continuous improvement and high levels of professionalism. Accreditation is a significant tribute to the city team members who strive every day to provide services and programs on which our community depends. It is an honor of the hard work and dedication of these team members that we recognize Public Works Week with this proclamation. And here it is. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Arvada. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Arvada to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and the Canadian Public Works Association. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Arvada, Colorado, that the week of May 17 through 23, 2020, be designated as National Public Works Week. We urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and the Canadian Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designated to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. This proclamation is dated today, May 18th of 2020, and is signed by the mayor and all of City Council.
Okay. Next, we have public comment on issues not scheduled on the agenda. Kristen Rush, it's my understanding we have at least one member of the public that is signed up to speak live.
Yes, Nancy Ford is signed up to speak for public comment.
I mean, Nancy Young.
I'm sorry. Yes, Nancy Young. My apologies.
Hello,
Ms.
am
Young?
I live?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you. On behalf of Arvada for All the People, we deeply appreciate and thank Arvada's citizens for your support in our effort regarding the $30 land deal, also known as Old Town Residences or the Trammel Crow Project. This luxury apartment building project that would have overwhelmed historic Old Town was initially denied by the Arvada City Council. A few weeks later, the same project was reheard by council, and approved. Many citizens were deeply concerned that the process of the rehearing was inconsistent with the Land Development Code. Arvada for All the People agreed and filed a lawsuit to correct the situation. Last Thursday, we received news that the Colorado Appeals Court upheld our position, reversing the council's approval of this project. Many citizens of Arvada supported us through the lengthy and costly legal process. We thank you. It is unknown whether the court ruling will be appealed, the developer will resubmit an application, or perhaps he will withdraw from the project. Arvada for All the People suggests that the city declare this site as open space. Southeast Arvada is becoming paved over and open space is rare. The site would be the perfect location for the restored .04 trolley. This was the original location of the Arvada station on the tramway line built in 1900, 120 years ago. It also contains a rare segment of historic rail bed leading to the station. This suggestion would make a wonderful addition to our National Historic District. Thank you, Arvada citizens.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. And now, do we have anybody else signed up to speak live, Ms. Rush?
Mayor,
not.
that was Nancy Nancy. We're
Oh,
getting confused on
yes,
Nancy
we are.
tonight.
sorry, Ms. Young. I'm sorry. Not having your face in front of me. The two Nancys caused a little confusion for me. I apologize. Okay, anybody else, Ms. Rush, that has signed up to speak?
I'm not aware of anyone else.
Okay, we do have a number of people who have submitted emails that they would ask be read into the record tonight. I will try to get through them and I'll be stopped if I go past the 3-minute limit. First is from Van Walbridge. I'm a longtime resident of Arvada and I am adamantly opposed to a single hauler trash service. I thought the voters made their wishes clear a few years ago when this issue was voted down. Has the city council decided to do away with what the voters decided in an election? This is not a decision which 6 council members should make for every Arvada citizen. We should have the right to choose what trash company we want to use, which serves our needs the best, not the city. Competition is always best for the consumer, and why would 6 council members put more people out of work, especially at a time like this, when so many are out of work and can't pay rent or put food on the table for their families? The city council wants to take away more jobs. Sounds like something a government agency would do because, after all, government employees don't worry about their jobs. They are always secure. I know my taxes will go up because the city will be committing millions of dollars to purchase trash bins and hiring city employees. More government employees for which my taxes pay. All this and the fraud that will occur when council members or city employees get kickbacks from the company who wins the contract. We all know that will happen. We need free enterprise and competition. The $20 per month is more than I pay now, and I will get less for it. If I choose another service, I still have to pay a $4.25 fee for nothing. Shame on the city council for making a decision like this. At the very least, it should go to the voters for a vote like it did before. Don't take our choice away and don't put the other businesses and their employees out of business. If this passes, I will do everything in my power to see that every council member that voted for single hauler trash is voted out. Next one is Lynn Callison. To the Arvada City Council, I have read over the past few months, citizens of our city banter back and forth about their concerns regarding trash hauling services. The arguments break down into a few categories. Those in favor: 1, too many trucks on my street in a week loud, dangerous, tears up the roads. Number 2, there's a belief that hauling services can be cheaper. Number 3, we should all be recycling. The city can provide that. Those against, number 1, choice means I control this service. Those trucks mean people are employed by a variety of businesses, and the employee has a choice of where he works in his chosen profession. Number 2, competition is the key to lower prices for services rendered. Central control ultimately ends in exclusionary contracts and service out of the control of the end user. Number 3, the benefits of recycling are something that should be weighed regularly, not committed to even when cost/benefit changes on a regular basis. If there is nothing else that this COVID situation should demonstrate, it is that the American way of life is balanced upon the shoulders of the citizens who see a need and find a way to provide for that need. You as a city council have the opportunity to allow the creative problem-solving structure that is our free enterprise system to work, or to ensure forever that the trash hauling business is only a business for those corporations who have enticed the city with the promise of lower prices and service, only to limit or shirk their promise on the service side once the monopolistic contract is in place. Even if the city hires 2 providers, it cuts into the competition. The city is not there to provide every service we need. History has shown us that government that governs least governs best. If this issue is so important, neighbors should work with neighbors to negotiate their own neighborhood hauler. Short of that, it will cost in a million hidden ways and injure small businesses, employment opportunities, and kill any competitive driving force that keeps prices low. Further, spending time on trash pickup issues is not a very productive use of city employees' time. Trash hauling and its administrative burden will cost as much as the infrastructure it purports to save, and the service issues surrounding unhappy residents resolved as slowly. Please do not vote to entangle this city in my trash hauling issues. Next one is from Rebecca Hernandez. Good evening, members of Arvada City Council. Thank you for taking my comments into consideration regarding my support of the single hauler waste ordinance. Since moving to Arvada just over a year ago, I've come to love the community and the passion that they possess. I chose to move here after graduating from CU Boulder because of the incredible downtown and easy access to Denver, and can envision myself permanently planting my roots here. I'm very passionate about the environment as well as making life affordable for all of us. I view this ordinance as an opportunity to promote recycling, reduce emissions, preserve our roads, and most importantly for me, who is on a fixed income, make waste services more affordable. I am part of the next generation of residents who will be a steward of Arvada, and I see this ordinance as a step in the right direction to help preserve our community. Choosing a single hauler is one of the simplest yet most effective ways for the city to reduce its carbon footprint. I want the community I live in to be a leader in common sense climate solutions like this. Please support organized waste hauling. It is well worth its investment for preserving the future and integrity of Arvada. With gratitude. Next is from Daniel Monar. I'm an Arvada homeowner living near 64th and Sheridan, and I support the idea of having a single trash provider. Currently in my neighborhood, everyone has a separate trash provider, so there is a different large, noisy truck coming to each neighbor. The pickup schedules vary, so every weekend there is one or more large, noisy trash trucks on my street every weekday. It just makes sense from an efficiency standpoint that we all have the same trash provider. Arvada residents all currently pay the same providers for water, electricity, and natural gas. Trash service is no different and should be administered as a public utility. I encourage Arvada residents to consider the numerous benefits that come with greater efficiency. Thank you. Next is from Don and Marie Powell. We are writing as Arvada residents who would like to see progressive steps taken to reduce traffic congestion, duplication of services, and unnecessary environmental pollution. This is why we support the single hauler trash ordinance that is currently being discussed by the Arvada City Council. Those big trucks damage our streets and are noisy. Growing up in Denver, neighbors shared trash day, and the simplicity of having it one and done was and is more efficient. Now we live in an HOA community with one trash hauler and appreciate the trash cans only obstruct the sidewalk one day versus multiple days of the week. In addition, we only have to hear the commotion once a week. It's nice for the aesthetics, traffic, and safety of neighborhoods. The greater good is served by simplifying this public service. Please cast your vote in favor of the it says Singer, but it's single hauler waste ordinance and help Arvada to be a leader in 21st century city management. Next is from Rachel Smallwood. Miss Scene Rachel in front of us. Hello, Mayor and Council. I know that each of you are facing your own struggles around this challenging time, and I wish you all the best in facing your challenges, as well as finding silver linings to give you strength. I watched the workshop last week on organized waste hauling and found the information provided to be helpful and exciting. I am grateful to city staff for working so long and so hard on negotiating such a strong contract to benefit the residents of Arvada, and I am supportive of the contract for the following main reasons. Number one, I'm looking forward to each Arvada resident having access to affordable recycling. With this contract, recycling will be included, and residents will no longer be expected to pay extra for their conscientiousness. Currently, Arvada only recycles about 13% of its waste. I'm excited to see how much more our community can recycle once it's affordable and easy for our residents. Increasing our recycling success is an issue that is important to Arvada residents, and it has been indicated as such in the last 3 Arvada city surveys. Organized waste hauling is the way to achieve this. The top 3 cities for recycling in Colorado all have some form of organized waste hauling. Number 2, during last summer's Speak Up Arvada survey, residents indicated they would like to see from an organized waste hauling system, and they indicated that reducing trash truck traffic was important to them. Reducing trash truck traffic is very likely to lead to more resilient roads, quieter and safer streets, cleaner air quality, and lower greenhouse gas emissions. Number 3, I'm excited about the prospect of having access to group pricing, as HOAs have long been privy to. This group pricing will save me, as well as most Arvadans, money. I currently pay over $30 a month for trash and recycling pickup. My family works hard to limit the amount of waste we produce. So with this contract, we will have the choice to pay for the 32-gallon cart, which only costs $11.50 per month. I will save more than $20 each month with this contract. Most Arvadans pay between $20 and $30 per month, and this contract ranges between $11.50 and $19.90 per month. So most Arvadans are looking at some economic relief with this contract. And with those lower prices come more services. As I've noted, recycling is included, as well as bulky item and yard debris events, which we currently don't have. Our current system forces Arvada residents to call each individual hauler to find prices and details because that information is neither transparent nor accessible. On the other hand, with this contract, there are excellent customer services provided, including as well as prices and additional information, and easily found on the city's website. I find that this contract has wins upon wins and ultimately benefits the majority of our population. I hope that Arvada enters into this contract so that we can become a more sustainable and a more affordable community. Thank you. Next is from Terry Warrener. It is my wish to be part of the discussion about waste hauling in Arvada at the Monday night city council meeting. I first noticed a problem when recovering from cancer treatment over 10 years ago. While trying to rest, I was disturbed by noisy trucks at least twice a day, almost every day. When I asked a city employee why there is such a wasteful system, I was told nothing could be done. It was years before others seemed to share my concern about not only the noise, but the wear on our roads, air pollution, and sheer waste caused by duplication of services. My bill rises almost every billing period as well. As I started to look into the issue more, I found that Arvada does not recycle to the same degree as other cities. Recycling is important to me, but not always easy to do. The presentation I attended by city staff indicated that the proposed system has increased recycling in other cities. I missed the spring cleanup once offered by the city and was pleased that that would be part of the proposed contract. There is a plan to divert yard waste from the landfill as well, and I would hope it would be chipped and offered to residents as other cities do. I did initially have some doubt about Republic as the contractor. One of their very large trucks going much too fast on my street startled my dog, who escaped from me and was killed. Now that several of my neighbors have changed to Republic, the trucks stop more often and don't go as fast. I see other haulers going too fast because their customers are spaced far apart. I now believe the solution is for a single truck to stop at most houses. I'm ready to give Republic a try after hearing that my neighbors are currently satisfied with their service. It is my wish that the city adopt a single hauler. It would reduce my cost by almost half and provide more services than I currently have. Next is from Dominic Baca. I am commenting tonight to voice my support for the single waste hauling ordinance. I grew up here in Arvada and still live here in the city today. Overall, I am proud of my city, but as an environmental scientist and environmentalist, I wish Arvada would focus more on sustainable policies that would benefit future generations. I'm a member of the Latinx community and have heard time and time again that my loved ones want to recycle but can't afford the high prices. The single hauler waste ordinance would save my community money, allow them the opportunity to recycle, and would decrease emissions in residential neighborhoods. For me, this policy is a no-brainer. I've heard the argument that choice is more important than the well-being of our community, but I encourage neighbors to consider this. Low-income households, which are usually also people of color, want a choice to recycle. These folks, myself included, want a choice to breathe in healthier air in their own neighborhoods. We also make the choice to elect each of you into office because we trust you to govern. In my 23 years of existence, I've seen this issue come up time and time again and ultimately get struck down by those afraid of change. The time to pass this ordinance is now. Thank you for your time. Next is from Kathy Jackson. I would like my comments read aloud at tonight's meeting concerning the one truck, one street. I want fewer trash trucks on my neighborhood streets. On my street alone, I have probably 5 trucks every day, Monday through Friday, morning, afternoon, and evening, day in, day out. Our street is already in really bad shape, as are most of the streets around Arvada. I don't see any plans for fixing all the streets in Arvada, especially with all the cutbacks they will have to make due to the virus. It seems like having less trucks would certainly help. My council member said, well, there are Amazon and delivery trucks and they aren't getting less. What a fatalistic attitude. First of all, trash trucks weigh a whole lot more than delivery trucks. Our street has a sign that heavy trucks aren't supposed to come down the street, but it is never enforced. I appreciate all the work that the Sustainability Committee has gone to for this proposal. This has had over 2 years of study, and I greatly appreciate all the work. My council person said, let the people vote on it. Well, did we get to vote on Walmart? All the construction of apartments at 58th and Sims, all the way to Ward Road? No. Do your job and let us come into the 21st century and join 11 other municipalities around us. I look forward to having our recycling increase from a dismal 13%. That was actually from Kathy and Mike Jackson. Next is from Olith Katzman. Dear City Council, we have recently been alerted that the council is considering not implementing the single waste hauler plan. We are incredibly surprised by this. The question for single waste hauler has been going on for years, and the population of Arvada has consistently supported the idea. It would be inconsistent with the will of the citizens to listen to a few loud voices that are anti this important issue. Importantly, single hauler waste hauling is, number one, better for our streets. We have at least 10 waste hauler trucks every week on my neighborhood street alone. Number two, improves the recycling rate. Number three, more affordable for Arvada residents. And number four, still allows an option for individuals who want to hire a private company to haul their waste. We're a city of over 120,000. We need to start acting like it and make the right choice on this matter. Next, I have some that have been forwarded to me by Kristen Rush. I would also indicate for the record that council has been forwarded a number of emails from individuals who did not ask that their email be read into the record tonight, but they will certainly be part of what all of council will be reading and considering as we move forward on this issue. Next is from Randy Mormon. Please read the following during public comment. I first want to say thank you, and thank you to the city staff for all the hard work you have done over these past months, working on the organized waste hauling ordinance and contract. Also, I want to say congratulations to the city for acquiring a grant from the Recycle Partnership to pay for recycling carts. This is the right time to make this change to an organized waste hauling system. Our current system is broken. The proposed changes aren't perfect, but we shouldn't let perfect be the enemy of good. If we were to start a new waste hauling system, we would not set up the system we have today. We wouldn't create a system that charges residences different prices for the same services, one that charges more to residents who live in older neighborhoods and less to those that live in newer neighborhoods. We wouldn't create a system that has 9 or more trash trucks traveling up and down our neighborhood streets every week, causing air pollution and noise, threatening the safety of our kids and pets, and causing expensive road damage. We also wouldn't create a system that isn't fair. One does not charge each user for the amount of waste they produce. Finally, we wouldn't create a system that is so inefficient that our residences pay more than their neighbors in nearby communities and are discouraged to recycle because of the additional cost from that inefficiency. We want to protect the quality of life we have in Arvada. That includes having clean air to breathe and safe streets. That also includes recycling, that is one of the fastest actions we can take today to address climate change and create local jobs. It also includes having more choices to reduce our waste and save money. The new organized waste hauling system isn't perfect, but it helps us get closer to these community goals. There's a reason 70% of the US has an organized waste hauling system. It works. Change is hard. 11 other Front Range communities have gone before us, changing to an organized waste hauling system. While it wasn't easy at first, none of them has looked back. They continue to provide good quality services to their residents at competitive prices. We look to you as our leaders of Arvada to make the right choice for our community and to change our waste hauling system from a broken one to an organized waste hauling system that helps us achieve our community goals. Now, let me get to the next one. Next is from Iris Horowitz. I'm submitting this comment for tonight's City Council meeting. Dear City Council, thank you for this opportunity. I urge you to move forward and vote on organized waste hauling. We know the proposed monthly fee for recycling and trash pickup will save most Arvada residents money. Let's not wait any longer to give residents this financial relief. Right now, I see 7 trash and recycling trucks roll down my street every week. While this is great for my 2-year-old who runs with glee to the window every time he hears a truck, it's not great for his asthma. In fact, in a 2019 landmark report, researchers found that air pollution from diesel-run vehicles are to blame for 1/4 of all cases of pediatric asthma in the United States. An organized waste system would have a 1 street, 1 truck approach, which would greatly reduce air pollution in our city from trash and recycling trucks. It would also go far to prevent wear and tear of city streets, which would save the city money in the long run. The people have elected you to lead and make hard decisions on behalf of all Arvadans. Please lead and make this decision. Putting this to a vote is not the answer. A vote would give equal voice to residents who live in HOAs and therefore already receive the benefits of bulk priced waste hauling. Don't let residents who already receive these benefits speak on behalf of residents who do not through a vote. You have the contract details, the feedback from residents, and many months of planning, deliberating, and researching this program behind you. Please make the call. Thank you. Next is from Untitled Katzman. I have recently been alerted that the council is once again considering the single waste hauler plan. Question for single waste hauler has been going on for years, and the population of Arvada has consistently supported the idea. It would be inconsistent with the will of the citizens to do anything other than move forward immediately with its implementation. Importantly, single waste hauling is 1, better for our streets. We have at least 10 waste hauler trucks every week on my neighborhood street alone. Number 2, improves the recycling rate. Number 3, more affordable for Arvada residents. And number 4, still allows an option for individuals who want to hire a private company to haul their waste. My family moved to Arvada 6 years ago. My husband is a local teacher, and I am an attorney in the city. We have consistently watched our city grow in healthy ways, and we're proud of that. It's still surprising to us that we don't already have a single waste hauler in the city, considering that my family's middle-class budget, as well as our roads and our environment, desperately needs this. Let's continue to move the city in the right direction, environmentally and economically. Next is from Shelby Graham. Dear Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, I'm very excited about this recycling and trash program and support the City Council passing this ordinance. We are going to save about $15 a month on recycling and trash services based on the new options available through this program. It is great to know that there is actually more choice available to us with this program. We have never found any of these size and price options to choose from when we call around for quotes from haulers. In fact, when we ask about getting a smaller size trash cart, they told us we can get a similar smaller size, but the price will be the same as the 96-gallon cart. This current model we are in seems very backwards to me. In our house, we only have one kitchen bag of trash a week, maybe two, depending on the week. But we have to pay for the 96-gallon cart, even though it's almost empty every week when we put it out. For every other standard service, water, electricity, natural gas, we pay based on the amount we consume and only that. Said another way, if our trash were a pizza, our family is eating a small pizza, but is being charged the price of a large pizza. This program will offer a variety of options that allows us all to pay more fairly based on the amount of trash we are throwing out. Additionally, we do not live in an HOA that have family and friends that do. When talking to them about trash and recycling, it pains me to know that I pay almost double what they do just because I do not live in an HOA. This program will allow those of us who do not live in an HOA to also get the benefit of volume pricing. Thank you and city staff for working so hard over the past few years on this initiative. This will be a huge step in the right direction for Arvada. Next is from Dorothy Wiseman. Dear City Council members, I would like my comments read into the record concerning trash hauling. I am totally in favor of a single trash and recycling hauler for Arvada. There are several benefits: fewer trash trucks on city streets, thus reducing wear and tear, noise and air pollution, lower rates and recycling included. I don't see a downside. That's from Dorothy Wiseman. I believe Catherine is that. Nope, there's more. From Keegan Conley. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I support the organized waste and recycling program because the proposed program saves me over $16 a month by dropping my monthly bill from $28 to $11.50. That's an annual savings of $198 per year. In these times, that money will go a long way in helping make ends meet. The proposed organized waste system will also improve my quality of life by reducing the amount of pollution that I breathe. On my block, we have 5 trash service providers. Of those, 3 provide both recycling and trash service. Each week, I get 5 trucks on my block, and every other week, I get 8 trucks. That's an average of over 6 trucks per week, equaling 338 trucks per year. No wonder there are all kinds of cracks in the road because the road gets a lot of wear and tear. If my block was served by 1 trash truck and 1 recycling truck, then there would only be 78 trucks on my block per year. That's a reduction of 260 truck trips a year. I have asthma, and this issue is one of quality of life for me. Trash truck and traffic emissions affect my asthma the most since they are released right outside my front door. 6 trucks a week emitting pollution directly in front of my house makes my asthma worse than it otherwise would be. Considering my asthma, reducing these emissions even a little bit is a massive benefit to my health and well-being. I encourage you to approve the organized waste and recycling system because it is a benefit to my health and my wallet. Thank you for considering my point of view. Next one is from Catherine Wallace. I've lived in Arvada most of my life. I bought my first home here in 1999. I have seen trash companies come and go and have had frequent battles to get decent customer service at a decent price. I'm very frustrated by the number of trash companies and the number of trash trucks on our roads, which my tax dollars pay to maintain. I have no doubt that going to a single hauler system would be a great improvement. The bargaining power of the city as a whole is far greater than my personal power as a single consumer. As a city, we can negotiate for better rates and ensure that everyone has access to recycling. I am strongly in favor of a single hauler approach. Please read these comments at the City Council meeting and record them for the record. Kristen, I believe that's all of them I have. Is that?
Yes, that's everything I received by 5 o'clock.
Very good. Okay, let's find a better way to do that next week so I don't have to read so many. We can spread the wealth or have somebody who's really good reader from the city do it. Next, and is there anybody else that's come on the phone to speak at this time, Kristen?
No, there is not.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to new business. We have the consent agenda. And we have several items on the consent agenda. The first is R20035, a resolution authorizing a wireless communication site ground lease agreement by and between the city of Arvada and American Tower Asset Sub, LLC. Second one's a resolution authorizing the First Amendment to an intergovernmental agreement between Jefferson County, Colorado and the city of Arvada for maintenance and snow removal. Third one's a resolution authorizing a wireless communication site ground lease agreement by and between the city of Arvada and Verizon Wireless. Next is a resolution authorizing change order number 1 to an agreement between Arvada and FCI contractors to change the scope of work and increase the contract amount by approximately $486,000. Next is a resolution authorizing a Fourth Amendment to the Master Services Agreement between Arvada and Paymentus Corporation dated July 28, 2011, in an amount not to exceed $300,000 in the first year. And the last one is a resolution approving the Eighth Amendment to an employment agreement by and between the Arvada Urban Renewal Authority and Marine Sea Fair as Secretary and Executive Director. Do I have a motion, Mr. Marriott?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I move that that consent agenda items R 20-035 through 20-040 be approved.
Motions for approval. I'll go through a roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Dot Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Marriott.
Aye.
Ms. Simpson.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And for the record, Ms. Ford, I have spoken with Marine Fair regarding the 2 items that you asked that I address with her. And they will be addressed by the board as well.
Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. Okay, next we have resolutions. First is resolution 20-041, a resolution adopting a policy concerning electronic participation at council, board, and commission meetings and amending city council rule 2B. Ms. Morris, are you taking that?
I am, Your Honor. Thank you. And I just wanted to make a quick correction that we realized after I had submitted this report would actually be amending City Council Rule 1B, so I apologize for that error. Going into the report itself, COVID-19 has substantially altered how City Council may safely conduct public meetings in accordance with applicable legal requirements and in a manner that allows for appropriate citizen participation. This proposed policy, if adopted, would create a streamlined, organized approach for remote public meetings. To give you some highlights of what this policy would provide for, the draft policy would apply to City Council as well as any other city board, which is subject to open meetings law. So that would include Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, that sort of thing. The draft policy contains provisions which would apply during emergency circumstances, such as what we're in right now, but also provisions that would apply under non-emergency circumstances, albeit on a more limited basis. The remote participation would be allowed under this policy in an executive session, assuming certain precautions are taken to keep information confidential. The policy also contains specific provisions to safeguard the procedures necessary for quasi-judicial proceedings. In conjunction with the adoption of this policy, City Council must also amend City Council Rule 1B to ensure that the rule and the newly adopted policy do not conflict. One issue that I did want to raise, and again, I apologize for this because I did not include this as part of the proposed motion, but there is a City Council Rule 9A that addresses when and how a City Council rule may be amended. So there's a possible 2-meeting process or a 1-meeting process that might apply. And here, the City Council rules can be amended Typically what would happen is we would submit a written version of the city council rule of the proposed amendment as we did today in one meeting, and then we would formally vote on it in the next. So you have the choice today of doing that, or Rule 9A also allows you to vote on an amendment the same night that it is proposed in writing, and that would simply require a unanimous vote of council members present in order to switch to that one meeting amendment process for the city council rules. As we had discussed back on March 23rd, when council had voted to amend Rule 1B, that rule has a provision that does not allow participation, remote participation by any council members if there are 4 or more council members physically present in council chambers. Obviously, given the circumstances that we're under right now, council voted, and rightfully so, to temporarily suspend that rule, and that rule is suspended through June 21, 2020. But as I previously explained, you can vote tonight to unanimously waive that 2 meeting requirement and change meeting Rule 1B tonight, or you can vote to set it over to June 8th and then vote formally on the rule amendment on June 8th. Either way, council can vote on the policy, the electronic meeting policy tonight. And the Arvada team recommends that City Council approve R20-041, a resolution adopting a policy concerning electronic participation at council board and commission meetings and amending City Council Rule 1B.
Okay, Ms. Miller.
Happy to make a motion if nobody has any questions.
I see no other hands up. You may proceed.
All right, Ms. Morris, I'm going to make this motion to approve this resolution. We're thoroughly confused about what we can do on the 8th, but you can clear that up for me after. I move that our 20-041, a resolution adopting a policy concerning electronic participation at council board and commission meetings and amending City Council Rule 1B be approved.
And I would also add to that motion that City Council move to waive the 2 meeting requirement of Rule 9A, assuming that's what council would like to do.
And the council waives the 2 meeting requirement in 9A.
So this will take a unanimous vote to pass this motion as presented, just so that everybody is clear. Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marriott?
Aye.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So you did get a unanimous vote. So we will not have to have an additional motion on this for June 8th. So very good. And I think it's a great policy. You know, obviously it's something that's going to work during this current situation, gives us some flexibility moving forward. It will, I think, ensure that the public will always have their opportunity for input. City council members will have their opportunity for input, and particularly with quasi-judicial hearings, that there won't be an abuse by council or anyone else. So thank you for that. Next, I will move on to Resolution 20-042, a resolution authorizing a 4th extension of the effective date of the city manager's declaration of emergency relating to the novel coronavirus COVID-19 and the associated public health crisis. Who's taking this one?
That would be me, Your Honor.
Okay.
The ongoing pandemic created the need for our city manager to declare an emergency on March 13, 2020. The city manager's emergency declaration has been extended by City Council on a few occasions and currently expires on May 30, 2020. The last requested extension was approved during a special council meeting on April 29. Since that approval, the number of COVID-19 cases have continued to increase in the Denver metro area and throughout Colorado. Currently, the state of Colorado is still applying restrictive precautionary measures to prevent spread of the virus, as reflected in Governor Polis's Safer at Home order. The ever-changing conditions associated with the public health crisis requires an environment that will allow for quick decisions. An extension of the emergency declaration will also support the city's eligibility to receive emergency funding to offset city costs associated with the public health emergency. Therefore, the city manager is requesting an extension of the emergency declaration through June 30, 2020. The city manager has and will continue to record any use of the powers authorized under Section 26-28 of the Arvada City Code, and City Council will be regularly informed of all such actions as soon as practical under the circumstances. This action mirrors similar action taken by neighboring municipalities. It also provides the city manager with the flexibility to continue to address a rapidly changing situation at a local level. The Arvada team recommends that the City Council approve R20-042, a resolution authorizing a fourth extension of the effective date of the City Manager's declaration of emergency relating to the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, and the associated public health crisis.
Very good. Mr. Pfeiffer, you're first.
Yeah, I just want to be very clear. Can either you, Rachel, or Mark be very clear about what this extension means? I mean, you said it, but let's be clear. We're not extending the safer at home or anything like that. Let's put some clarity around it, please.
That's correct. All this order does is extend the declared state of emergency. It does not place any requirements on our citizens.
Right. So it's just so we have the ability to act during this time. It has nothing to do with the health orders that are there now. Okay.
That is correct.
It gets confusion from constituents on this one. So sorry to keep asking us every time we put this out.
No problem.
I'll make the motion if there's not any other questions, Mayor.
Ms. Ford has a question, I believe. Ms. Ford?
No, I was going to make the motion, but that's fine.
Go ahead, Mr. Pfeiffer.
Okay, I move that resolution 20-042, a resolution authorizing a fourth extension of the effective date of the city manager's declaration of emergency relating to the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, and the associated public health crisis be approved.
Motions for approval. Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that Council Bill 20.
No.
Yes.
You're voting on
I'll
Mr.
move.
Sorry.
I've moved on from this item. I'm trying to hurry this council meeting on. Yes, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marriott?
Yes.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. I think that's probably the only time we're going to laugh at the extension of an emergency ordinance. Ms. Miller, would you like to make some motions at this
Could I
point?
please make some motions now?
Thank you.
Okay. I move that Council Bill 20-014, an ordinance remapping a section west of Alkire Street, north of West 80th Avenue on the City of Arvada zoning map dated June 1st, 2020, in conjunction with the Land Development Code 2020 and Comprehensive Plan, and Council Bill 20-015, an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of certain property along Ralston Road, generally at the intersection of West 58th Avenue and Independence Street, for the construction of traffic signal, utility, and or related improvements as part of the Highway Safety Improvement Program project at West 58th Avenue and Independence Street, project number 18-TC-03, CDOT project number 22275, and Council Bill 20-016, an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Arvada and Jefferson County, State of Colorado, for distribution of CARES Act funds. All be approved on first reading, ordered published in full, and hearing be set for June 1st, 2020 at 6:15 p.m.
Motions for approval on first reading. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marriott?
Aye.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That passes unanimously. We will now move to public hearings. It's 7:25, so we're well within our time to be able to call to order the public hearings. First is a ratification and approval of CP 2020-002, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the Arvada Comprehensive Plan 2014 to incorporate revisions related to the 2020 Land Development Code update and associated remapping. Should we do all three at the same time, Rachel?
You can do that if you'd like to do that, since they are, since the first two are related.
I'll do the third one separate then.
Well, actually, I take that back. You can do all three together.
Okay, thank you. We'll also consider Council Bill 20-012, an ordinance repealing the Arvada Land Development Code 2008, Part 3 of the Code of the City of Arvada, Colorado City Code, adopting a new Arvada Land Development Code 2020 as Part 3 of the City Code, adopting the City of Arvada zoning map excluding west of Alkire Street and north of West 80th Avenue, dated June 1st, 2020, adopting a rezoning comparative table, adopting penalty provisions for violations of the 2020 Land Development Code, and amending certain sections of Part 2 of the City Code affected by the adoption of the 2020 Land Development Code, and also Council Bill 20-013, an ordinance repealing and reenacting Section 74-31 land use fees of Article 2 Community Development Department service fees of Chapter 74 Planning and Development of the Arvada City Code. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we'll have Ryan Stachowski start leading off with this presentation. Ryan?
Yes, Mayor and City Council, thanks so much for your time this evening. Rob Smetana is going to give us a presentation and an overview of where we've been. But before he gets started, I just really want to take this opportunity to compliment staff, compliment City Council on their leadership, compliment the Planning Commission and all the members of the Land Development Code advisory committees and all the other community members that we've interacted with over this 2.5-year process. This really has been a monumental undertaking that the city team has undergone in Congress with the community members, and tonight's the culmination. And so I'll have Rob Smetana present this, but I just want to really state how proud I am, not only of the city team, but all the participants that have made tonight possible. Take it over, Rob.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Mayor, members of council, we're here to talk about the three items that you mentioned: comprehensive plan amendment, the land development code update, and the remapping that goes along with the new code. Next slide, please. I'll have Patty McCartney, our long-range senior planner, talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan update for the first few slides, and then I'll come back and talk with you about the bulk of the presentation.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The proposed comprehensive plan has been developed is in response to the development of the update to the Land Development Code and remapping of the zoning map. This proposed amendment incorporates land use related modifications consistent with the new Land Development Code and remapping. The proposed update will modify chapters 2 and 5 of the comprehensive plan for land use elements associated with the new Land Development Code. These include updating the densities and new zoning districts of the land use plan categories. In addition, it will update the future land use map consistent with the remapping of the zoning map, and then update the Land Development Code process and procedure references. Next slide, please. The proposed amendment includes modifications to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan to align with the new Land Development Code zoning districts. The map that is shown on your screen, it highlights the updated land use plan map areas proposed for the comprehensive plan amendment. Next slide, please. The proposed comprehensive plan amendment does not include an area in the northwest portion of the city, which is located west of Alkire Street and north of 80th Avenue. This excluded area will be done separately and is scheduled for City Council consideration, second reading in June. Next slide, please. And I would like to return to Rob Smetana, who will continue with the presentation.
Thanks, Patty. So I'll get into the workings of the land development code first and then talk about the mapping at the end. So when we started out with this project 2.5 years ago, we had 6 goals in mind for the project. They were to implement the Arvada Comprehensive Plan and the other adopted city plans associated with the comprehensive plan, to implement the City Council's strategic results, to update, simplify, and modernize the zoning districts and standards included in the code, to streamline the development review process, to make the LDC easier to understand and use for both developers and the general public, and to update the zoning map with new zone districts. And we think with this effort, we've gotten to the point where we have addressed all 6 of those items. Next slide, please. So in terms of participation over the time we've been working on this, we've had a number of opportunities for folks to interact with staff and to provide their comment. And then we've also had a number of more focused efforts and discussions on the ordinance itself. So as far as the public is concerned, we held essentially 7 open houses over that time frame. 5 of them specifically about the LDC, and 2 directly related to the remapping effort. During that time, we also held open office hours, and we had a specific meeting with a particular neighborhood that had some concerns about the zoning proposed in their neighborhood, and where we're able to interact with them and put their minds at ease. And we received over 100 online comments throughout the period. We also had an internal advisory committee that was staff as well as members of the business community and representatives of the development community and residents. That group met 11 times over the process. We also had a number of focus group meetings to start out with the process. And we had 7 of those meetings, and they talked about very specific details, such as short-term rentals, the development standards, how this would or would not impact Old Town, and how to deal with residential development. We also met with City Council and Planning Commission a dozen times. And then, of course, we had the Planning Commission public hearing just a few months ago. Next slide, please. So some of the key elements of the update were the elimination of underutilized and obsolete zone districts. We had a number of districts that were rarely implemented and even more rarely used. We haven't had we currently have a new community zone district as one example that has been on the books for 20 plus years, but it was only implemented on a few properties. And I believe development only occurred in 2 locations under that zone district. We created a residential neighborhood zoning district to help protect the character of existing neighborhoods in the city. One of those key features there was to lower the building heights that are allowed within those residential districts to keep a more residential feel, rather than allowing new style townhome units that we're seeing in the metro area encroach upon those neighborhoods. We developed mixed use zone districts that allow for development flexibility in response to market changes and redevelopment opportunities. There are 4 of those districts with different scales, everything from a neighborhood scale, which is obviously small scale mixed use, to transit, which is adjacent to our transit stations and can allow some fairly significant development. We created a commercial general zone district to accommodate retail, commercial, and office in locations where we did not want to apply mixed use to prohibit residential development in those areas where that made sense. And we simplified the height transition zone that takes place between the properties that would be in the residential neighborhood and the residential agriculture zone districts. Next slide, please. We also looked at revisions to the parking standards for both commercial and residential development, and we'll talk a little bit more about those details here in a minute. developed new standards for the MX and CG zone districts. And a lot of those standards are based off of projects that the council recently approved. So we tried to mirror what the council in the past had thought were good projects. We're allowing additional flexibility through landscape design buffer options. And that helps for potentially smaller sites that have trouble meeting our current landscape requirements. It gives them options for how to address landscaping adjacent to residential districts. We've simplified the lighting standards, which were very complicated in our current zoning ordinance or land development code. We've updated the wireless communication facility regulations to address such things as small cell sites. Updated processes to reflect more modern planning practices, such as allowing for master development plans if it's a multi-phase project, major modifications, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and how that impacts variances. And then we updated definitions and graphics, just again to modernize the code. Next slide, please. In terms of the structure, we also tried to make the code easy to follow. So starting kind of at the big picture of, what are the zoning districts and what are the dimensional standards that are required in those zone districts? And then once you know the zone districts, what can you do on the particular property? Then understanding the design elements and the building design elements. And then finally, what type of approvals are necessary. So starting kind of at the big picture and then dialing down to the actual details of how you get the project completed through the process. We think that's a more logical structure to the code. Next slide, please. So some of the modifications that were made in response to comments we heard from the public, from Planning Commission and City Council. So in terms of the mixed use suburban, urban, and transit zoning districts, we heard concerns that because we were allowing residential in those districts, that residential may take over those districts, and we wanted to be able to have some way to potentially hold on to commercial areas where that's appropriate, but also to allow residential development where that's appropriate. So in order to do that, we wanted to make sure the Planning Commission and City Council had a voice in that. So in those districts, any type of residential developments in the mixed use district will require public hearings and ultimately City Council action to approve a residential use. Commercial uses, though, by and large, would be permitted uses and could be approved administratively. Next slide, please. In the past, there were some issues and concerns with self-storage facilities, and that did lead to a moratorium on them a little while back. And so we've made some modifications to where those can be located. And we also require those to go through the conditional use process. So again, a recommendation by Planning Commission and ultimate decision by council on whether the use would be permitted in a particular area. The design standards that we originally had in the code, we felt were pretty good. And so we carried those over. But in these two zone districts where it's the most concerning, we did require conditional use approval. But in the IL and the IG, the two and more light industry and heavy industry districts, it would be a permitted use and as an administrative review. Next slide, please. We also looked at application types that we thought council would be concerned about potentially if there was an appeal. And so there are currently three types of administrative reviews that if they were appealed would go directly to council. And those would be the master development plan, which is again a multi-phased project where they may want to develop phases over a number of years. This process allows them to do that and then move into site plans for various stages. But if that was a concern and we had an appeal, that would go directly to council. Same thing with a site-specific plan, a site plan. Any appeal of the administrative decision on that would go to council, as well as minor subdivision final plats. There are a number of things in the code that automatically go to council. These are the three right now that are administrative, that if there was an appeal would go to council. Next slide, please. We heard concerns about views as it related to Grandview Avenue and along 52nd Avenue in kind of the Newtown area. And so there are a couple of provisions that provide some restrictions against views along those two streets. Grandview, it takes into account the grade difference from the height at Grandview down to the lower heights, or I'm sorry, the lower elevations along 56th. And it does require, though, that along Grandview, essentially buildings can be no more than 35 feet above the center line of Grandview, so essentially a 3-story building for a distance of 150 feet from Grandview. And that's where, if you remember from the study session a few months ago, we showed you kind of the topography of that, and that 150 feet really starts to push buildings down the hillside. We also thought it was important to have some height restrictions along 52nd Avenue, where it's adjacent to the Columbine neighborhood. And that's an area where we would allow some pretty significant height right adjacent to I-70. But this then also provides a buffer of height against the Columbine neighborhood across 52nd to the north. Next slide, please. In terms of parking, we talked a great deal about how to address parking for multifamily buildings and developments. And our current system is basically just, it doesn't matter the number of bedrooms in a unit, it just was based on the unit count. And this gets a little more fine-grained and actually really better dials in parking for multifamily projects by separating it by bedroom count. And we have 4 different categories for multifamily and multiplex market rate, and then 2 categories for projects that would be deemed affordable. And we think that gets a better calibration of parking based on the surveys we've done within Arvada and the parking utilization and with adjacent communities. Next slide, please. In terms of commercial parking, the biggest concerns we heard were in the Old Town area. And so we took that into account, and we basically eliminated parking for commercial uses within the Old Town area in historic buildings and new structures. So that helps out, just kind of make it a more pedestrian friendly environment, and also reduces the risk of having buildings torn down just to replace it with parking. We still do in that district have parking requirements for residential development, and that would be 1 space per unit for any residential development. Next slide, please. We have added in a major modification process. In the past, we've talked with council quite a bit, on cases about minor modifications, which are generally something we've done administratively for quite a long time. And those are anything that require a modification from the code that's less than 20%. The director can review those, determine if it's meeting the intent of the zoning regulations and the zoning districts, and approve that. Beyond that, it required a variance, which sort of took it into a different animal with the Board of Adjustment, out of kind of the planning realm into a slightly different realm. We thought it was more appropriate to keep even the major modifications more in the planning realm. And so those would initially go to Planning Commission for recommendation and to City Council for the ultimate decision on those major modifications. That would be any modification above 20% in the code. Next slide, please. We made a modification to accessory dwelling units to deal with an issue that came up a little while back, where we had a accessory dwelling unit on a corner lot that maybe wasn't the best positioned. So we did modify the regulations as it relates to ADUs on corner lots, requiring them to be 10 feet beyond the plane of a home on either street frontage. We didn't see it as being a major issue on interior lots, because typically, or almost 100%, those are located in the rear yard. And so we didn't see a concern there, but we hope this addresses the concern we saw about corner lots. Next slide. We also took a look at a restriction we had in the code regarding food trucks as they related to brick and mortar stores, brick and mortar restaurants. And as food trucks have become more popular, even the brick and mortar restaurants are now having food trucks. So we did recommend elimination of the 200-foot spacing requirement for food trucks from brick and mortar restaurants to encourage more of that interaction with the food trucks, as well as we think there's really kind of a symbiosis between the two at this point in time. Next slide, please. This is just a chart that kind of shows you the existing zone districts that are on the right slide, the proposed zone districts on the left side, and just a comparison of kind of which districts went into which. We've hopefully fairly closely matched up districts to what exists out there today in the new code, except for those areas like the mixed use zone districts where we are trying something new, and you'll see how those are kind of implemented primarily against the districts that we already had zone PUD. Next slide, please. So in terms of the zoning map, I don't have a lot of detail on that tonight on the slide presentation, but you did get a zoning map book as part of your packet. So you can see all the various zone districts and how they're proposed to be implemented as part of the remapping. And so we've tried to comprehensively look at the city, and what I really want to point out is the large percentage of the yellow that's on there. That's residential, and that's generally the residential that exists out there. And a lot of that, which is kind of the paler yellow, is all the residential neighborhood, the more or less the protected neighborhoods that are out there. So you'll see the vast majority of the city is in the protected zone. Next slide, please. So we did want to talk about just briefly how this code relates to economic recovery from the current atmosphere we're in. Next slide, please. And some of the things that we think this will accomplish will be to streamline the process. So most new applications for commercial, light industry, and residential projects can be approved administratively as long as they're meeting the standards, and that will streamline the process for projects. Even those that would need to go through a process may need only the conditional use permit approval or a major modification approval versus the PUD process that we have today. And based on that, we think it can save between 6 weeks up to 26 weeks, depending on how applications are being processed. And then again, for the conditional use, where you're just making a decision on a use, not having to look at the entire project per se, but just looking at whether residential is appropriate in a particular MX district, that will require a much smaller outlay of funding or development costs to begin with for an applicant, but still give you the information that you need to make that decision. And we're hoping that as we look at those conditional use reviews and probably even the major modification reviews that you might see, that we can look at shortening our timeframes on those from a typical 3 review process that we do now. Some of those could be done in a 2 review process, which could save 4 or 6 weeks in the process. Next slide, please. So the next steps are you will see the remapping for the Northwest area at your June 1st meeting. And you'll have that public hearing on June 1st. The Planning Commission will actually see that tomorrow, and then you will see that on June 1st. We kind of added the fees into this, so I'll just mention that the third part of this review, the fees changes, that's directly related to just the change of application types we've got in the new code. The fees are pretty much like for like. We just needed to change the names of the various processes to match the new code. Next slide, please. So the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the comprehensive plan changes, or they adopted the comprehensive plan changes, the recommended approval of the Land Development Code as it is in front of you, and recommended approval of the official zoning map minus that part you'll see on June 1st. Next slide, please. Are there any questions? Or I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Does that complete your presentation?
That does, yes, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Okay.
Yes, that completes the presentation.
Well, first of all, I'm going to open it up for public comment prior to questions from council. We do have, is there anybody, Kristen Rush, on the phone for public comment?
Yes, we have 5.
I'm sorry?
Yes, we have 5.
Okay. Let's
The first
take
one
those
is
spot-
the first one is Stephen Byers, and he's only on the phone, no camera.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Byers.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Williams and council. I've come before the council before on Old Town issues, mainly related to the view. I was part of the original citizens committee that put together what we wanted Old Town to look like in the future. And one of the main things was the view along Grandview. I think that's gradually getting whittled away. I think some of it went with Solana. Of course, about a third of it went with the Trammell Crow development. And then I still see some issues with this. So I just think it's important that someone from way back when reads, at least talk to the record about what we wanted and what we planned and how it's disappearing. So I went to these open house meetings and expressed my concern. I was told that council wanted to go high on the east end of Newtown, and that council thought that the only view to really be considered was the south end of the platform at the RTD train station. If you go back into what we said back then, that is not what we said. And we even specifically said the north side of Grandview was an important view. It's a unique view in all of Colorado. It's something that makes Old Town unique in all of the Colorado Old Towns. So if you look on your proposed zoning page 5, you'll see on the east side of Old Wadsworth, south of Grandview. And by the way, this view was to extend from Lamar all the way down. You'll see that 65-foot building, which I think as Rob said, was a 3-story height. Again, takes a huge section of the view, which again, I disagree with. I would say your council, you can make all the changes that you want, but I think it's important to say this is not what was intended back then. So I would request that be reduced to protect the view, that we don't just whittle away another part. My other question concerns the Trammell Crow development. When I was looking at it there, given what has happened, all I see is PUD, and I don't see what they're supposed to follow if they have to resubmit, or if they move out and someone else comes in. What is supposed to be there? Is it going to be 65 feet? Is it going to be 45 feet? I would, of course, say it should be 45 feet. So again, you guys, you're our elected representatives, and I respect whatever you do. And this is not like life and death, but I do believe that the voice from the committee and the citizens of the past should be heard. And I wish it was better considered in the planning and the protecting of the view of Old Town. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Byers. Next, Kristen Rush. Who do we have?
Next, we have Judy Gardner.
Ms. Gardner, can you hear us?
I am muted. There we go. Okay, I'm on Zoom.
Very good. We can see you.
All right, excellent. Let's see here. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Might I be allowed to share the screen for a moment?
Sure.
Okay.
No,
if
Mr.
they-
Mayor, we cannot do that through this
Okay,
setup.
that's all right.
Oh, okay.
I
All
was,
right.
I just wanted to speak about in the new LDC, the table 3151 home occupation standards. There are a couple of things that I think are unnecessary and unenforceable. I'm speaking on behalf of the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission. I'm the assistant chair of that. And we're concerned specifically about artist studios, but this really affects all home businesses. In the clause on outside work, the proposed code reads that any noise under outside work, any noise caused or generated by conduct of a home occupation shall not create a noise disturbance as defined in Chapter 38 of the Arvada Code of Ordinances. Okay, that is reasonable and enforceable, and that needs to be there. But the next sentence, no noise associated with a home occupation may be audible at any time beyond the property boundary of the residence where the home occupation is conducted, is physically impossible, unenforceable. I'm not sure, how you would implement that unless you have some sort of sound buffering technology. A child care facility, you can hear the children across in the next yard. A seamstress, if she opens her window, you can hear the sewing machine. So I think that last sentence under outside work could be stricken without weakening the code at all. And also in that same section at the very bottom, and I just scrolled too far, there is also a discussion of glare beyond, that is visible beyond the property line. And it's not really defined what glare or vibration are. So I think that those environmental impacts need to be examined and in some way quantified. They seem like they're sort of unquantifiable, sort of vague things that if anybody had a pissing match with their neighbor, they could just complain and get their business shut down for something that's just completely undefinable. There were a couple of other things, but I believe that Emily King who is also the director of the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission, is going to address those regarding murals and the sign ordinance. So I will shut off my microphone and turn it over to the next person.
Thank you so much.
Emily King is next.
Ms. King?
Hello, I'm Emily King.
Good evening.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. So Judy gave me a little bit of an introduction. I'm the chair to the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission. And the commission has a couple concerns about some little nuances in the code that directly relate to some missions of the commission. The first one is 3135, Commercial Standards, Part B, Art Studio Makerspace. Such use shall not exceed 5,000 square feet unless located within a vertically mixed-use building. And we believe this square footage limitation is really harmful to allow for those kind of really important creative collaborative spaces in Arvada. They're already usually moved to light industry or industry areas, usually because of cost. But just to give you an example, Art Gym, which is an amazing facility in Denver, is a 17,000 square foot facility that has all kinds of huge printmaking presses and jewelry making and different kind of facilities that artists can't access themselves. So that building requires 17,000 square feet to support all of its members. Arvada's own makerspace, the lab, is 4,400 square feet. It is in a light industry park right now. But I spoke with the owner today, and he said that their goal is to expand to an 8,000 square foot space to support 100 to 150 creatives. So the commission would ask that limitation just of square footage be removed. There's a number of other businesses listed in that commercial standards section, and none of the other ones have a square footage limit. So I'm not sure why it's added to art studios and makerspaces. The next one would be 6122. exemptions and partial exemptions to sign code. Number 3, signs that are applied to or painted on a utility cabinet or pedestal. And the small letter B, the cabinet or pedestal is not larger than 4 feet in horizontal dimension and 5 feet in vertical dimension. The commission has been working for a long time now to start using these utility boxes throughout Arvada as a way to use for placemaking and really neighborhood connection. And we have already gone through the process of a call for entry and have 4 artists selected to paint 4 boxes in Old Town Arvada that are owned by the city. These boxes do not fit in with this requirement that land development has put in the code. So they're taller than 5 feet. You know, they're much skinnier than 4 feet, but there's not a square footage recommendation here. It's just really strict limitations that already, you know, you already need permission from the person. You know, there's a process the commission goes through, and that's slated for June. So, you know, that's something the commission's doing that we can't do in this code. And the last one is in table 6151A. That's for wall signs, mural wall signs. And in the other standards section, under B, murals shall not contain text covering more than 3% of the mural area. And this really extreme limitation on the amount of the artwork that can be text is really limiting. A number of the most popular and beloved murals throughout the region all contain text. I think we've all seen the one that says, "Love this city, Denver." Everyone loves to take pictures of. That mural would not be allowed in Arvada. And Golden's new mural that says Golden, and it has different features all throughout the letters. That would not be allowed in Arvada. The one mural that we do have in Old Town that says Old Town would not be allowed under these restrictions. So I think that the intention was to make sure that businesses weren't using these as promotional murals, but I think that the text of it can be completely restated so that artists can still use typography and hand lettering as elements in their murals to increase that placemaking and community value. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for participating. Okay, Ms. Rush, who's next?
Joshua Rodriguez.
Mr. Rodriguez, if you'll come on.
Yeah, this is Joshua Rodriguez. I was a member of the Citizens Land Development Code Committee. I think it's my understanding that the church group asked to convert their land in Candelas from light industrial to residential. I haven't seen that update on the map. It's still light industrial. My concern is that most of the area is like mixed use, medium density, so 3 to 4 stories. I was hoping that we can stick to 3 stories. And so when a developer comes and says, hey, can I build an extra story? We can use that as a leverage for affordable housing. Same thing with, if you think about Newtown, Old Town, Arvada area, a lot of that area is going to be higher density. And so if we can lower that height to like 4 stories or 5 stories, so when a developer comes in, says, oh, I want to build 8 stories, instead of just giving them the 8 stories, have some leverage to get us some affordable housing units. That's all I had to say. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Rush, what do we have next?
Carolyn White.
Carolyn White, are you signing on?
Yes, I am. I was unmuting my camera. Can you hear me and see me now?
We can indeed. Good to see you again.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. For the record, my name is Carolyn White. I'm with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck, 410 17th Street in Denver. And we have submitted 2 letters into the record since you combined all 3 hearings into one. I'll address them both quickly in the 3 minutes. One is commenting.
You're not limited to 3 minutes, so go ahead.
Well, I'll be quick anyway. I didn't ask to read the letters into the record. I'll just briefly summarize what we're asking council to consider for tonight. One letter is addressing the future land use map, which is figure 2.8 in the comp plan, and it's page 251 of your packet. And in this particular area of the future land use map, this I'm interested particularly in an area that is just off Indiana Street and 67th Avenue. We represent a developer who is seeking to acquire and aggregate a number of parcels in that vicinity. And when they initially looked at these parcels, they all had the same general future land use designation. And it was one that was conducive to the creation and development of a large primary employer type campus. In the new proposed future land use map, 2 of those parcels are going to change to a designation of neighborhood community commercial, which obviously allows different uses. So it's sort of breaking up the potential for these uses to all be the same and all support and be attractive to a potential primary employer. Additionally, then when you go over to the zoning map, similarly, 2 of the parcels which presently are designated for light industrial uses are slated to go to neighborhood community commercial zone district, which again sort of breaks up that large aggregation of property which all has presently the same designation for the same category and the same type of use. And so what we would encourage the council to do is look at leaving them all in the future land use map in the category of office industrial retail, and leaving them all in the zoning map in the category of light industrial. And although I am submitting these comments on behalf of my client, who obviously has a specific type of development that they hope to undertake in the city, the reason for this is really not just for my client and what they might hope to develop, but for any developer like this who's looking to locate a large primary employer in the city of Arvada. This is a prime area and one of the few areas where you have large significant swaths of land designated presently for this type of use. And if you break it up like is proposed in this change, we think that it could potentially dissuade potential primary employers from being attracted to this location. So that's our request, and I've got a little more detail in the letters that we submitted. I would like to comment, as we did in the letters, that overall, as was highlighted by staff at the beginning of this presentation, the majority of the changes that are proposed are overwhelmingly favorable and make the code clearer, more streamlined, easier to use, easier to understand, and we're supportive of them. It's just these 2 changes to the categories that we have concerns about. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and appreciate you including the letters in the packet, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. White. Have a good evening. Okay, who else do we have?
We don't have any more speakers. We just have the 2 letters that were requested to be read into the record.
Okay, we also have a, let me begin with that. We received a letter from John and Jeannie Solheim. Dear council members, this addendum is to be read in conjunction with the John and Jeannie Solheim prior request to designate 6575 Sheridan Boulevard, Arvada, Colorado 80003 as a mixed-use suburban MXS zone property under the 2020 Land Development Code, currently before you for review and approval. I attended the Planning Commission meeting earlier this year, and I provided the April 2020 submittal to this council with detailed attachments. Since April, several changes have occurred. The fuel station at 65th and Sheridan has ceased business, and the fuel tanks have been pulled on that now vacant site. Vacancies and turnover are also being experienced by properties in Arlington Square and other nearby locations. The reasons are a complex mix of area demographics and the offered and designed goods and services by these businesses. This area is within an obvious mid-class community with clientele coming from a mix of residential homes and apartments in the local area. The proposed MXU zoning for the 64th and Sheridan business area will permit alternative development of combination residential and business properties if that is desired for future redevelopment. The mixed-use concept is a real consideration for future development and still allows for the regular commercial uses. There is no good reason to constrain the 6575 Sheridan property to only a commercial use, CG, commercial general zoning, just because it was previously zoned P1, professional use, for a short period use in the 1980s. To limit 6575 Sheridan, the CG zoning will only unreasonably and oddly restrict probably better uses for the development of that 1.58 acre site. Mixed-use suburban MXS is the best compatible zone designation to transition from the adjoining mixed-use urban MXU zoning proposed for 64th and Sheridan. See the attached sketch sheet Exhibit E. To cause 6575 Sheridan to be restricted to CG will inhibit a good, better, best development plan for the 6575 Sheridan property. Please zone designate 6575 Sheridan to MXS under the new 2020 Land Development Code and Zone District. John Sondheim for John and Jeannie Solheim. I'll hold this up. I don't know if, oh, thank you. You've got the map there. Very good. Okay, and then we have via email the following. Kristen, unfortunately, that is not opening on my iPad. So can you read that into the record?
Which one do you want me to read?
The
Both of them?
one from Urban Renewal.
Okay. Dear Mayor and City Council members, the Arvada Urban Renewal Authority is the owner of the 4 acres located in the vicinity of 56th Avenue and the railroad tracks and Wadsworth Bypass and Van Street. Aura and Trammell Crow, the developer of the site, respectfully request that the parcels be remapped as MXT65. Please see the attached map, which is on the screen right now. The address, the vacant land, parcel ID 39-114-21-007. Number 2 is 5665 Wadsworth Bypass. Number 3 is 7267 West 56th Avenue. Number 4 is 5620 Vance Street. Thank you for considering this request. Sincerely, Maureen Fair, Executive Director.
Okay, the next one I have is from Tina Martin.
Yes.
And she is at 7900 Flower Street. Hi, as property owners of 7900 Flower Street, we do not agree to the zoning change. We were not given any opportunity to understand why this change is being proposed and what it means to us as property owners. Here are the following questions we would like information on. Number 1, how we can keep our A1 zoning instead of being changed to RN 12.5. We had purchased this property with the intent of having alpacas and goats for retirement income. Number 2, what is the difference between RN 12.5 and RN 32.5, as our lot is 1.2 acres. So we were wondering why under the new zoning we would not be RN 32.5. Number 3, for RN 12.5, RN 32.5, what are the animals and types, quantity allowed? Number 4, what is the advantage of the city changing this from an A1 to an RN 12.5 from a landowner's perspective? We did not receive any official notice, mailing, email, etc. from the city of Arvada proposing our land was going to change from A1 to this new zoning. Again, we disagree with this change and want to keep our original A1 zoning. And we did receive an email from Preston Brana, who has written comments, but did not want them read into the record. He submitted them separately. Ms. Rush, I don't think we had any others, did we?
That's everything I have.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'll close the public comment portion and open it up for city council questions at this point. And I would like to get someone from staff to respond to some of the citizen comments tonight. I won't be able to tell you what order they came in, but I'll start with Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a couple of questions. I believe this first one should be directed probably to Mr. Smetana. And that would be, you mentioned in your presentation that there is a process for appeals of staff decisions on development applications, and that those appeals would go to the city council. My question is just this. I can picture the situation where either the property owner or someone who's trying to purchase and develop the property may want to appeal a staff decision to city council. So I understand that, and I can appreciate how and why that's there. The question I would have is, does an adjoining property owner have any ability to appeal a staff decision on adjoining property? And so I think about if you know, that it was going to be purely a staff decision on allowing a development, can the property owner next door say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not okay with that, and I'd like to appeal that staff decision?
Yes, let me I'm just quickly looking for the exact language, but yes, there are a number of people who can file an appeal. The applicant can, an adjacent property owner can, and I believe we said anyone with standing as far as the state is concerned can also file an appeal.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then the other one I have is more just a general, and I think everybody should ask their questions before you answer this. Just keep this in mind. I was just going to bring up the number of individual requests we've had with the adoption of this. You know, how do we handle that, or what would these particular parcels have at their disposal if they don't like the particular zoning being applied to them now? So I would suggest maybe don't answer that now, and that'll come up after everybody asks their questions.
Okay, I'll move on to Ms. Ford then.
So I have a couple of questions at the moment. I guess, I don't know if this is for Ryan. Ryan, has the word compatibility been defined anywhere in the new land development code? Some of these questions are being triggered by constituent asks, just so you know.
So I'm going to let Rob weigh in on that as well, but I think that we were very careful because compatibility is so challenging to define, and what's compatible to you and what's compatible to me might be two very different things. And so really we want to talk less about compatibility and more about standards, and that standards that are defined that share unique qualities amongst the zone districts and the character. So we have character areas, we have shared development standards, those types of things, that if you can meet that, then I think the assumption then it is compatible. So we have, I think to a large extent, avoided the term compatible because it is so arbitrary, and try to really hone in on what is the thing that is consistent with one another in order to try to meet that compatibility standard without necessarily putting it in that arbitrary realm. Did I articulate that okay for you, Rob?
Yes, what we did is we created a section called Evaluation of Aesthetic Consistency. And it talks about projects having to, where that's a requirement, having to match roof pitch and form, roofing and cladding materials, window styles and window orientation and door orientation, and the color palette. So we didn't talk about compatibility as a word, but we said you need to be consistent. And here's some ways that you need to be consistent with an adjacent project, with an area, that type of situation.
And I noticed in a couple of areas, one in particular, which I've written down, but the word appropriate has been used as well. And I find that to be an interesting word because it's not defined as to what appropriate means. And to me, I see that as somewhat arbitrary as well. One of the areas was in 4.5 or 4-5-1-1 on page 187 in relation to parking, I believe. And it also talked about in that same section about parking spilling into neighborhoods, and that it was up to the administrator to determine that. And it doesn't say how that will be determined. What variables will be used to determine that? That's one area, but I've seen the word appropriate in other areas as well.
So there's certain portions of the code that really talk about things in generalities, is the opening statement. And I'm not sure, I didn't quite catch the reference you gave. But then below that, there are more specific standards, or later in the regulations, there are more specific standards. But we tried to start with kind of a general section, a general statement for each section. And in many of those cases, it is kind of a little bit kind of the 30,000 foot level. But then you dig deeper into, or you go deeper into that section, and it does have requirements.
Okay, I'll stop there for the time being.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just wondering if I'm going to open up a can of worms with this, but I have a question for Ms. Morris.
Go ahead.
Mostly because Ms. Mueller on the motion is this payback. So, I'm with these emails and comments that we're getting about people that are purchasing land. They're purchasing land for the intent of this, and they're in the middle of a transaction and they wanted to do this. So throughout the land development code review process, we've received these and had people come down to public comment. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could do something like have somebody submit a letter of intent that says, I am in the process of purchasing this land. Look at my comps, and I've got the bank pre-approval, and I wanted to purchase this land for this. I don't know if there's any kind of grandfather clause that we can do, but then that goes back to every resident that is talking about their property and wanting to buy alpacas and goats, and then I'm not sure where it ends. So can of worms, I'm sorry, but wanted to throw it out there.
No worries. We have gotten a lot of those comments tonight. I will offer first that this has been a very extensive, very public process where we have really solicited a lot of input from the community. And we do have a number of individuals who are aware of that, and as part of their due diligence for purchasing a property would probably become aware of this LDC change. I will have Lori Graham, our Senior Assistant City Attorney, give you a little bit more information, either her or Ryan Stachowski, because I know there have been conversations with individuals who have purchased property and are going through a process in terms of discussing what that process looks like with us adopting a new land development code.
So I'm going to go ahead and just address the law that addresses the question, which is under Colorado state law, there is a thing called vested rights. So if I'm looking at buying a property for a particular issue, I don't have any vested rights yet. The vesting occurs after I'm an owner and I have gotten some sort of authority from the city to proceed, such as an approved site plan or something like that. And that keeps out all of the people who are saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and all of these things. So there is a bright line in the law. And I'm sure Ryan can talk about some of the gray areas or how we can help our citizens. And rather than the big bad attorney who says, here's the end and that's where you move forward or not. So go ahead, Ryan. Does that answer your question, Mayor Pro Tem?
It does. Thank you very much. I'm glad there is a bright line there. That makes me feel a lot better.
And I think that that's fair and good. I will also say that the intent of this process has, to a large extent, been to not change anybody's rights that they have today for what they can do tomorrow. And so one of the things that we've really done is tried to use the comprehensive plan to a large degree as our guiding document. And so those were things that were designed through a community conversation. And so the change, and even Rob showed you kind of that equation where this is the old this is the old planning designation, this is the new zoning designation, and we're trying to the extent of doing like for like. I will tell you that we didn't get it 100% accurate in all cases, but we probably got it 98% correct. And additionally, some of the individuals, and not necessarily the ones that made public comment or tonight or anything like that, but some of the individuals we talked to are trying to use this process as more of an entitlement process than they are through just kind of understanding this is what I can do today, this is what I can do tomorrow, and we're trying to make that as the same as possible. So we're not trying to circumvent that. If I'll use an extreme example, that you could build one house on a 1 acre lot, and then the next day that because you asked for a rezoning, you could do a mixed use building with 120 feet. That's not the intent behind this process. If you could do it yesterday, we want you to a very large extent to be able to do it today. And as I said, we didn't get it 100% correctly. And I think some of the comments that were made tonight fairly articulate that, and we can address those. But to your point, that the people that were in a position to do something today are largely in the same position to do that tomorrow with a better code to do it in.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I really do. And I also wanted to just comment that Ms. Gardner's statement about the noise ordinance, I agree with that one as well. Not being able to keep the noise on the property. My neighbor gives singing lessons and it's fun to listen to, but certainly isn't going to be able to keep it in our house for sure.
Mr. Jones?
Most of my questions are related to those questions that were brought up during the public comment. So I'd probably just wait until a member of staff has, and I don't know if they're going to go through and answer each one of those, but they're all related to different comments that were made. So I'll just pause until they're not answered.
Fair enough. And Ms. Simpson?
Thank you. So it was, I appreciate Ryan mentioning the comprehensive plan. There's a big goal in the comprehensive plan that I think is of value to all of us as a city, but in particular for District 2, and that's sort of the revitalization of Southeast Arvada. It's something that people on this side of town have been talking about for a long time. And so I wanted to just flag up the map for those, just for easy reference, so everyone knows what I'm talking about. I'm looking very specifically at our light industrial and general industrial sections that are being zoned. And I just wanted to invite staff for a moment to just talk, because there can be some confusion between the comprehensive plan and the land development code. And so I just wanted to welcome an opportunity for us to talk about how the land development code plays into helping us accomplish the comprehensive plan and what the next steps might be for that part of town.
Let me take a stab at that. Thank you very much for the question. So there are really two separate types of planning documents that really work together. One is the city's comprehensive plan, which is a visionary document that is done in collaboration with the community and city council and many other stakeholders that set the overall vision of what the land use map and other sort of citywide goals should be. And we really rely on that to understand, this area of town should be industrial, this should be residential at a certain types of density and those types of things. The land development code is really the implementation tool that we use to implement the comprehensive plan. And so one of the reasons why we went through this process to implement to update the land development code is because we had a lot of lofty goals that were part of the comprehensive plan that we felt that our current land development code didn't really have the technical ability to address in a kind of a clean and efficient and streamlined way. So what we believe is that this new land development code will help implement the comprehensive plan and the vision that's there, but do it in a streamlined process, but also do it with development standards that we think that can help the overall development pattern. So with specific reference to District 2, we have a lot of industrial in that area. And within that area is a specific zoning, current zoning called Clear Creek zoning that was developed in partnership with Jefferson County. And bluntly, the Clear Creek zoning is a good zoning from a business perspective because it allows for a lot of use, and it has much more kind of limited in terms of regulations, in terms of development standards, outside storage, and those types of things that allows a development pattern that doesn't look as pretty as perhaps some of the residents in District 2 would hope to. And so the things that we were able to do in the land development code is really work with the community and hone in and say, if we were going to develop or redevelop those areas, what are the development standards that still allow the uses that are good and still needed in those areas, but allow us to make those developments look a little bit nicer, add curb gutter and sidewalk, screen outside storage, make the buildings look nicer, and just generally speaking, clean up the way that the development patterns are happening. And so we're using the comprehensive plan in order to set the vision, but when they use the land development code to really make that vision come to life and in a way that the citizens can be proud of. Additionally, what I'll also say is part of that process is that this is an iterative process and circular. So now that we have the land development code, then we'll take the next step and ask the community, what do they want to see at a more micro level? And so our next plans are to do sub-area plans of specific areas within the city. And the two areas that we're looking to address first, hopefully later on this year, are the Newtown area and then the Northwest area in Candelas, where we can do a comprehensive sub-area plan of just those areas, talk to the community, understand what they want, and then be able to have a new vision of those areas and use this new land development code then to implement that community vision.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Also, bless you, Mayor Pro Tem Miller. Saw that. And then I just wanted to also reiterate constituent concerns about heights. When I was on the campaign trail this past year, that was something that was consistently brought up to me as a value. It didn't matter who I was talking to. The view from Grandview is just such a tremendous resource for every one of us, no matter what our beliefs are. And so just again, as we go through this, I invite you, Ryan, to talk a little bit more about the grading and whatnot, and then just encouraging everyone to always think about the heights as well and preserving that special view that we have.
Great.
Okay, Mr. Jones, you still wish to?
Well, yeah, so I don't know. Ms. Simpson just touched on it, and I don't know if there's anything else that Ryan would like to add with regards to Mr. Byers' comments with regard to the views and what the original committee had intended for that area and how we're addressing that kind of going forward. We'll start with that question.
So I think it's a fair question. I'm actually gonna, I want Rob to weigh in. I specifically want to kind of go back and recall a conversation that we had with City Council. I think it was in the December timeframe when we were talking about the heights and really the staff's attempts or the team's attempt to calibrate the heights as you moved gradually away from Old Town and specifically Grandview. So Rob, can you talk a little bit about the effort, the calibrations that you guys did, and the specific intent that you did to follow? And also, I know that you're familiar with the story that Pastor Byer was speaking of what was in the transit framework plan, where those views are supposed to be preserved from, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so we're going back to the transit framework plan. If we had some discussions around that, and in that plan there were actually a couple of different graphics showing potential view corridors, and even those two graphics that were in the plan conflicted with each other a little bit. And some of those views that were identified, if you were actually out there standing in the location where a view was identified, there was no view. So I mean, we started kind of with that, but also looked at the fact that we did want to try and preserve some of the views. And right now, the key focal point in Old Town as it relates to Grandview is the transit hub and the views that you get from the transit hub. So we did key in on that one particular piece of property, which is a fairly good stretch of Grandview Avenue, and then calibrated the heights so that we had a minimal impact on the view you'd get from the station platform, looking from the west to the southeast towards downtown Denver. So again, we tried to calibrate the heights proposed to those views to keep any buildings at the lower horizon, basically, from those views. And we also looked at the topography out there, which again drops off. I'm just looking at my other computer screen here. That drops off about 38 feet from Grandview down to 56th Avenue. So we tried to look at that and say, even if you had a 6-story building at the 56th Avenue elevation, really you're blocking 38 feet of that building height as you're viewing it from Grandview Avenue, so that the perceived height would again be what we tried to build into the code, which is not to have more than 35 feet above the height of Grandview Avenue. And so that was the attempt to address those views. And we did show council some simulations of what those would look like. And I'm hoping you might remember those from December. But we tried to show how buildings that hit the maximum height in those areas would still kind of be at the lower horizon. It's not to say that they wouldn't block any view, but we tried to make sure they had the minimal impact on view that made sense in a particular area.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the reminder of, I remember that back now in December when we talked about that, but just again wanted to make sure that we at least addressed that question that Mr. Byers offered up. The second goes into the comments from the Arts and Culture Commission, and how do we address their concerns with the way that this is written today and how it would impact some of the things that they had with regard to the noise disturbance and the sign code and using the example of the Old Town sign there that's been painted and that not complying with this new the way this is written now. How do we address those concerns kind of before we vote on this?
Sure. Well, the art studio limitations only apply in the MX, just so that 5,000 square feet she spoke about. That only applies in the MX districts and the Old Town districts. Elsewhere, there is no restriction on the size. So if you were to have an art space, maker space in a CG or one of the industrial districts, the light industry or the general industry, there are no restrictions in size there. And even in an RA district, so a large residential lot, there's no restriction on the size of that space. So the restriction is fairly narrowly tailored to specific zone districts where that use may or may not make sense in a large scale.
I guess, okay. Rob, I interrupt here and say, well, Why not permit it in all districts? What's the rationale?
A larger building. It is permitted in those districts. It was just restricted to the 5,000 square feet in the MX and the OT.
Why? That's what we're trying to get to. Why
Sure.
is it restricted in MX and OT?
OT is pretty similar to what we have kind of that thought today. It would also mean potentially a much larger structure being built in Old Town that may or may not be in character with Old Town. So that was one of the considerations there. In the mixed use districts, it was more the thought of when you've got residential uses there, maybe you don't want a large art space in that type of situation. That's certainly open for interpretation, but that was kind of the thinking behind that in the MX district.
Okay. And then, so what about the noise, the noise nuisance that's stated? How do we address that?
Sure. So that's in the section that's related to business use of the home. And so it's just a question of when you've got a home essentially surrounded by other homes, what is the tolerance for noise and things happening outside, metal work or whatever the case may be. And the thought behind those restrictions were just that, you can have a business in your home, but it shouldn't really be a commercial business. It should be something that respects the character of the surrounding residential area. So that was the thought about that.
Okay, so you all know I have a yoga studio, but I'm also a woodworker, and I like to use my chainsaw and make these cool little bears that are cute and cuddly, and they're pieces of wood. So I wouldn't be able to use my chainsaw to make this cute and cuddly wood bear that I take to the craft shows and sell as part of my craft.
Well, you may not be able to do that outside, but you could certainly do that inside in a garage, as an example.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So using Mayor Pro Tem Miller's example about the piano teacher who teaches piano and they've got the window open, how does that? And again, you've got a neighbor who, for whatever reason, is using this as a way to get back or whatever. And I hope that never happens, but it does. And how do you create a situation where I'm teaching piano lessons inside? I don't have AC, so I open the window and it carries outside, and my neighbor complains.
And let me weigh in real quick, because I think that the point is valid, and I think we should probably just acknowledge that, because we actually have, in my interpretation, kind of two conflicting things in there. One says follow your noise ordinance, and then one puts an enhancement to that noise ordinance that says it can't even leave the property. And so I think it's probably a fair consideration to say everybody's got to follow the noise ordinance. That's something that needs to happen. But the fact that it is unenforceable and impractical, and it creates kind of two levels of which one are you following, the noise ordinance or this enhanced noise ordinance that's here. And so it may make sense for City Council to just consider striking that second sentence.
Okay, so somebody, when they make the motion, think about that, or we may have motions to amend. So we'll address it one way or another.
Okay, and then I've got two more questions, and it just again is following up on two more comments that were made. The question on the land, page 251, and page 251 in my electronic version here was different, but from Carolyn White, and kind of that changing. Does that go back to what you stated earlier, Ryan? Was the intent was or is to what could be built or developed today. Ultimately, we want to be able to be built and developed tomorrow. I mean, does that answer that question?
It does. There's a lot going on in the area in which Ms. White is talking about, and one of the things that we are trying to do in some of these conversations is clean up some stuff. And so we have, just for a frame of reference so everybody can picture this as well, in the 66 in Indiana area, where the Red Silo Coffee is, and named after the actual Red Silo, just north of the Storyline Church. And there's a lot of vacant land in there. Some of it in the county, some of it in the city. There are a current comprehensive plan designation today that talks about office, industrial, retail in that area. And most of City Council will recall when we had that conversation of preserving it for primary use back when the comp plan went through in 2014. That was the original intent. In this, there are some smaller parcels that border that area that we were zoning CG, the general commercial, which is consistent with that comp plan designation. But then we were also just doing some kind of cleanup comp plan stuff that made that comp plan kind of consistent with the retail uses south of it. And so it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Right now, moving it to that comp plan designation makes sense given the CG. But now we have a user that's coming along that perceives this other comp plan designation, the current comp plan designation, as being more advantageous for the things that they're doing. The blunt answer is that I think staff would be comfortable going in either direction. We see this as a commercial and industrial area. And so we didn't have a lot of prospects that were doing, primary job master plans. This happens to be one. That's great, but then we're also looking at, if this doesn't move forward, what else could be there? And so that's why we were comfortable with the CG as well. But we're really, from a staff perspective, comfortable going in either direction.
And if it were approved tonight as is, this particular developer could come and make a recommendation as to why they think it ought to be something different and ask for a change.
Yes.
As well, correct?
That's correct. I mean, in the future, when they were looking at the things that they wanted to do, they could ask for a comp plan amendment, and you would be looking at that in addition to the other parts of the conversation and say, yes, this is something reasonable, and that's something that we'd like to see happen.
Okay. And then my last question is about the person who bought the property and they have alpacas, and their question around, is that still based on these changes? And those are probably density changes versus more of the wildlife or the animal changes. I don't know. I'm just curious, does that impact kind of their retirement plans?
So we did have a chance to actually talk with that property owner today and to go back and look at the zoning. That was one area where, when we're looking at residential development, that was kind of a mix of different lot sizes with the existing zoning that didn't make sense. And we might have gone a little too far on the proposed zoning, and maybe that doesn't make sense for some of the parcels in that area. So in talking with that landowner, we understood where they were coming from. They have A1 property today, as does the property directly to the east of them. And we were looking at the 12.5 because some of the other lots in that area that are also today zoned A1 do not meet the A1 regulations, even today. So it was a situation where there were some non-conforming lots. But we believe if you wanted to take a look at those two particular properties, one of them is 7900 Flower, and I think the other one is 7914. We can get it before you make any motions, but we would be comfortable with those two going to the RA district, which is equivalent to the existing A1.
Okay. Yeah, so those are all of my questions. I appreciate your answers and appreciate the work that's been done on this. And I would just ask that whoever makes the motions that we take into consideration the noise disturbance and this lot, the A1 zoning to R, whatever needs to be. Thank you.
To RA.
RA.
Right. Can you also speak to the utility boxes about the reality that we've already authorized some competition for sizes that are not within what we're talking about here? And also the murals.
Yeah, okay, sure. I'm not 100% clear on the utility boxes, although I will say the way the code is written, those regulations apply to private property. So if it's in the right of way and it's a city utility box or an XL utility box that's in the right of way, that doesn't apply. You can still do the graphics that they were looking for with the permission of the owner. Now, if it's on private property, I guess we'd have to take a look at that. But that's kind of one distinction there between whether it's private or public.
So the ones in Old Town that they were talking about, they would be allowed to do?
I believe so, because I believe they're all in public right of way.
Not the Old Town sign. It's on a private building.
Well, we're not talking the mural right now. We're talking painting
Just
the
utility
boxes.
boxes? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as long as they're on public property, that they could be done, or it could be done the way they're proposing. If it's private, we'd have to look at that, but I'm guessing that the vast majority of them, if not all of them, are on public right of way.
Well, some of them might be on easements on private property, but.
Yeah, and yeah, I wish I had the detail on that, but I don't. But we can.
Okay, so on the murals.
So
I
on
love
the
murals, and we've fought to get murals in Arvada for so long and fought the sign code on it. Let's have murals.
Yeah, so that's the tough one. We tried to find some codes that had, at least for the time being, had survived challenges as it relates to murals. And so this is one that we actually saw in a number of different communities that seem to have survived challenges to this point to allow murals with the restriction, because we're not really supposed to, whether it's a mural or a sign, we're not supposed to look at the content of what it is. So the way to ensure that it really was a piece of art was to limit the amount of text, regardless of what that text says, but just really to limit the amount of text to make sure it was really a work of art. And I understand the issues with having something that says Old Town Arvada or We Love Arvada or whatever that message might be, but we really tried to find something that we thought could withstand court action or legal action. And so that's kind of where we ended up.
We fought like heck for Grandma's Noodles to be able to get her mural, which is great. And it was like Ryan will remember took an act of Congress, for gosh sakes, to get that done. So let's maybe have more discussion on that.
Hey, Mayor, well, before we move off your comment there with Grandma's Noodles, how much text is on that? Do you recall? I'm just curious for comparison.
Like, welcome to Arvada.
But I mean, I'm trying to remember, was it 50% of the sign, 25% of the sign? Do you remember?
Probably 15%.
Curious. Okay. Just trying to get it. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I was going to say, can there maybe just be a design waiver application? That way somebody can submit it. And if it says we love Arvada, we kind of bless it a little bit or something like that.
Or have the Arts and Cultural Commission review it first or something.
Exactly.
Well, that's one of the provisions that it has to go through them. That way we kind of get out of it's clearly not a sign if we're having an Arts Commission look at it. So that was kind of one of the provisions. Yeah, I mean, it's something we can certainly look at if we need to look at amending it outside of this effort. If you were to adopt this, you could give us direction to look at other alternatives and come back to you with some additional research, and we'd be happy to do that.
You're saying this is continuing to be a work in progress, even after we pass it. It's a living document that will be modified as need be.
And certainly, and that's one thing, we anticipate that 6 months down the road, it's a brand new code. We couldn't get it 100% right. And we anticipate that we will be coming back to you with minor tweaks as we move forward with implementing the ordinance, just because we couldn't foresee every typical or every untypical or unique situation that could pop up that we may need to come back to you and talk about. But this is certainly one of those items that we can put on that 6-month review and say, we'll come back to you with other options.
Do we have to wait 6 months on some? I mean, if it's easy.
No, certainly it's up to you. You can give us whatever direction you think is appropriate.
Thank you. I want to raise the issue of when you have an administrative decision by the director that it goes to the planning commission and then is not reviewed by and is not subject to appeal to city council. I'm almost thinking let's just cut planning commission out of it and have it go directly to city council to speed up the process, because, and Rachel's going to chime in here, I can see already. So I'd be interested in what others think of that, because it seems like one side or the other is going to use an appeal process for delays. And, you know, if we just have one review at the city level before it goes to a court review, wouldn't it make more sense to have it be the city council rather than the planning commission? So.
I have no problem with that from a legal perspective. And I think the timing issues that you've pointed out make certain that it makes some sense. It makes us reach our final determination for legal purposes faster.
Right. Mr. Marriott, did you want to speak on that issue? And then I've got Nancy's got her.
I did. I just wanted to make a quick comment about that exact issue. What I would have to say is the only thing about leaving that appeal with the planning commission is that it does tend to depoliticize that a bit. So like it or not, we all have to get elected, and we have everything that comes along with that. Planning commission members do not. And so it does take that politicization out of it. So I could go either way, really. I certainly don't have any trouble myself making any of these decisions on appeals, but I would just like to throw that out there for everybody to think about.
Okay, Ms. Ford, your turn.
So going back to the murals, could we just look at some other communities like Longmont that has an absolutely beautiful mural on the side of their building, in my opinion. They also have murals with a lot of text. So I am bothered by that statement about words. And I think that other communities have done this, and I think there's a way of doing this to get the murals out of the sign code entirely, because they're not signs, they're works of art. Not that signs can't be works of art, but works of art are not signs, really. And then I want to go back to the art studios for a moment, because in looking at, I wanted to ask, are garages considered a permitted accessory building to have a business, a home occupation?
Yes, we are proposing to change the regulations as it relates to business use of the home, where under the ordinance today, it can only be done in the residential portion of a home. We are proposing with this to expand that to allow it in a garage and in a detached structure.
Okay, great. And then going back to the noise, I don't know what our noise ordinance says in terms of times of day, but could we just put, you know, given that these are occupations now, the only, you know, give it a time limit, like 9 to 7 or 9 to 10 or 9 or whatever would be reasonable for especially a residential neighborhood. Oh shoot. I forgot what else I was going to say on that one. I just want to clarify. So are we saying in terms of the changing of zoning on pieces of land that a person has to actually own that land before they could come before planning and say, this is what I'd like to do? Thinking about the example in the Northwest area, and then also the one on Sheridan, because if that was the case, then that would certainly hinder people from if they had to own the land first, that would really put a lot of risk on them.
Sure. No, you just have to have an agreement with the landowner to pursue an application, but you don't actually have to own the land to pursue the application.
Okay, that sounds good. I do have another question from a constituent. Has there been anything written about a temporary housing in terms of zoning? For example, like mobile homes. We know that it's not allowable for people to live in mobile homes in their driveway, but I think people are actually doing it here and there. But as far as the mini homes that are more mobile, that are on wheels, that type of thing. Is it?
Sure. We did not set out specific regulations for that, but our thinking was if we actually had a project like that was proposed, that would be a great use of the PUD regulations that we have in the code. That way we could really tailor working with whoever that was requesting that particular use, working with them to design a community that makes sense, rather than trying to really get to the fine details in the code to create that type of use, which it comes in so many different forms. We didn't feel we could find the right balance. So we thought that would be a perfect use for the PUD district if we had a project like that.
Okay. And then I just want to repeat a comment that I've repeated many times in the past, because mass is an issue for me, not so much height, but mass. Because when we talk about views and we just talk about height alone and eliminate the mass, we are, you really have much greater opportunity to eliminate view by mass than you do height. And I still object to how the transit framework plan has been interpreted. And I just want to state that for the record, because I've read that plan very, very thoroughly and took out all the comments that pertain to Old Town. And I don't see the same interpretation. And that's all I want to say. I just want to say that for the record.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised right now. I would entertain motions, and I'm sure we'll have some amendments or discussion. Mr. Marriott?
Thank you,
Ms.
Your Honor.
Pfeiffer, did you have a question before we start?
Yeah, I do. I want point of clarification. You suggested the Planning Commission just being removed off of that. Is that going to probably be in one of the motions? I didn't hear any further conversation around it.
If it changes, right now, the proposal is that it go to Planning Commission. So if somebody wants it to do something else, we'll have to have a motion to that effect.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, Mr. Marriott.
Let me start with the first motion. So I move that ratification and approval of CP 2020-0002, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the Arvada Comprehensive Plan 2014 to incorporate revisions related to the 2020 Land Development Code update and associate remapping be approved.
Okay, so Ms. Morris, where are we going to want to have the discussion on the items that we've been talking about this evening?
That discussion would be appropriate when the motion to amend is made. So what I
would it be under this first motion, or is it going to be under the second
one?
Second item on the agenda?
Yeah.
Right, for the code itself.
Mr. Devon is shaking his head. He's not even a lawyer and he knows the answer.
He's a smart one.
Okay, so this is merely for ratification and approval. We'll have discussion on some of our discussion items in the next issue. Is there anybody Mr. Pfeiffer, do you have a question on this one?
No, I'm just making sure I'm following it because I want to make sure we're making it on the right one. So I'm with you.
Right, exactly. I'm trying to watch our P's and Q's on this one. Trust me. Okay, the motions for ratification and approval of the resolution by the Planning Commission. Ms. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Marriott,
Aye.
Ms. Simpson,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Next
Okay.
motion.
So I'll move on to the next one. I move that Council Bill 20-012, an ordinance repealing the Arvada Land Development Code 2008, Part 3 of the Code of the City of Arvada, Colorado, the City Code, adopting a new Arvada Land Development Code 2020 as Part 3 of the City Code, adopting the City of Arvada zoning map, excluding west of Alkire Street and north of West 80th Avenue, dated April 6, 2020, adopting a rezoning comparative table, adopting penalty provisions for violations of the 2020 Land Development Code, and amending certain sections of Part 11 of the City Code affected by the adoption of the 2020 Land Development Code, be approved on final reading, numbered 4728, and ordered published by title only. And at this point, I would like to invite amendments to this motion.
First, if I could say, Councilmember Marriott, I think it's Part 2, not Part 11.
Okay, thank you. The hole punch put a hole through that part of my words.
Okay, I'll try to deal with them in sort of the order I have them. Does anybody wish to make a motion with regard to dropping the last sentence pertaining to outdoor work pertaining to noise? Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I would move to remove the last sentence of that, or the last few words of that. I guess I don't have it in front of me, so I really probably shouldn't make the motion.
I believe it was the last sentence.
Remove the last sentence of that that deals with outdoor noise.
You accept that as a friendly amendment?
I'll accept that as a friendly motion, yes.
Okay, so we do not need to vote on that separately.
So just to clarify, that's section 3-1-5-1.
Right. Does anyone wish to make a motion with regard to allowing allowing no limitation on creative spaces in the MX zoning, or if you want to discuss the OT zoning? I personally understand the rationale for OT zoning, but the MX zoning.
I'll make that amendment.
So this, that's.
Do you accept that as a friendly amendment, Mr. Marriott?
So I believe I would like to vote on that one as a stand on itself amendment, because I believe I would feel opposite. So
okay. So you have that. We have a motion to amend to allow the creative spaces without the 5,000 square foot limitation in the MX zoning. Ms. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Nay.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Nay.
Mr. Marriott.
nay.
Ms. Simpson.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So that amendment passes. Doesn't sound like we need to do anything on the utility boxes. And it sounds like we're going to have a revisit on the murals. Anybody wish to, and are we okay on the 67th in Indiana discussion that they're saying it could go either way?
Yeah, based on what I heard talked about on that, is that, you know, they could come back at some point in time if that was a change that they wanted to make. But technically, you know, they could develop. There wasn't anybody proposing what they're thinking about when this was put together. So I'm okay with the way that is worded today. I would like to focus on, or make the motion on, changing the zoning, those two properties from A1. I'm sorry, is it A1
to RA?
To RA.
Yes.
And is it just those two properties that are in question?
Yes, those are the two properties that would meet the RA requirements.
And what are those addresses, Rob? Do you have it?
Yeah, so those are 7900 Flower and 7914 Flower.
Mr. Marriott, do you accept that as a friendly amendment?
I do accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Next, we haven't talked about that John Solheim issue on Sheridan. What's staff's thoughts on that? Have you met with Mr. Solheim or any discussions with him?
I mean, Rob, you've had the most conversations with him. I can give you my opinion as well, but why don't you lead, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had some conversations with him on that particular property. He did have a user that worked in the CG. It sounded like from his letter that maybe that deal has fallen through. But we felt it was a good transition there with the self-storage that's just south of his property. It's also not a major intersection. It's got a right in, right out access with Sheridan. And so the CG seemed to be to us, the right balance of uses that could be permitted there.
Okay, and of course, he could obviously come back to us seeking a rezoning if he so chose, if
correct.
He's a funny user. Okay. Okay, let's next have a discussion on the appeal to Planning Commission or City Council.
I would like to amend that to City Council.
Okay, Mr. Marriott, for reasons you've stated, I assume you're not accepting that as a.
That's correct. I'd rather see that as a separate motion.
Okay, so the motion is to eliminate Planning Commission as the level of appeal and have it go directly to City Council for an appeal from the director. Would that be correct, Nancy?
Yes, I'd like to see it go to City Council.
Okay, Ms. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Marriott.
Nay.
Ms. Simpson.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. I understand, that it might have a political element to it, but we're ultimately the most responsible, and so I think it ought to come to us. Okay, and then the last one I've got is the request by Urban Renewal to have the parcels that were described in their letter changed to the MX zoning. Is there somebody wanting to make that motion? I see no one wishing to make. Go.
I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like, I'd be happy to add that to the motion that I made.
So you're making that as part of your motion?
I will.
Okay.
I'd like to see that separate.
Okay. So let me withdraw that then as making that part of my motion, and have somebody either make that as a motion or make it as a motion to not do it, one or the other, and then we can vote on it separately.
Well, I'll make the motion to not do it.
Okay, so the motion is not to change the zoning on the Urban Renewal property to MX. Ms. Miller.
Double negative, so nay.
That would be correct if you are not in support of Nancy's motion. So no. Mr. Pfeiffer?
So we're voting, I hate the double negatives.
Right?
So it's no on not to change it. So I think that's right. And
if
so
you want it to go to the MX, you vote no. If you want it to stay as currently zoned, you vote yes.
So I'm going to say yes, aye, because of the other zones we've talked about to stay consistent with what we've said with the other properties.
Okay, Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Nay.
Mr. Marriott?
No.
Ms. Simpson?
Yes.
And I vote no, so that fails 4-3. So the change is to MX. Does anybody else have any other
I do, Mayor. Did we address the sound, the enhanced sound in the first motion? I just want to make sure that that was taken
Yes.
out. Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
we did. Mr. Marriott accepted that as a friendly amendment because he wants Mr. Jones to be able to keep
Friendly
his
bears.
chainsaw going during reasonable hours, I think, is under the regular part of the code.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize for interrupting. I do have a point of clarification. Just the proposed zoning, the way it is in the plan that you have for you in front of you for the Aura site is
Right.
as a PUD currently. And so Rachel can answer this question. I'm not sure the double negative got us to where we need to be. And I'm just not sure that the MXT was affirmed in any way, or if we're still doing the code. And I apologize for interrupting. Does that make sense?
I thought I made it clear with my instruction on the voting, but
I'm happy to make the motion if we need a new one.
I think it'd be nice to clarify the record. If we've got someone who's confused, let's, in an abundance of caution, it doesn't hurt.
Okay, Ms. Miller.
In an abundance of caution, I move to rezone that site to MXT.
Okay, Ms. Miller.
Aye.
And Mr. Pfeiffer.
Nay.
Ms. Ford.
Nay.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Marriott.
Yes.
Ms. Simpson.
Nay.
And I vote aye this time. Okay, same outcome, but it's clearer. Thank you. Okay, any other items of discussion or clarification elsewise? Let's, before we vote on the final motion, I'm going to support it as it is with the amendments that have been made. And I want to commend the team that's put hours and hours of time in this for 2 years. There's been great public input, community input on this. And so I think it's good to finally get this to some closure. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to make a comment. I just want to make a very quick comment as well. One, congratulations to the staff and thank you for all the work. Multi-year processes are not easy. And the nimbleness and flexibility they've shown to be able to get us to here has been quite impressive. We have made big strides. I will note that I believe this new land development code really sets up a balance between staff approval and city council approval. And I feel like we have it right here, but time will tell. And I think it's incumbent on us as a council to grow this up like the infant that it is, and not be afraid to if we do notice shortcomings or things that we've overlooked, to make sure that we do address those immediately and thoroughly, as this document should really last for quite a long time. And that's my hope that it will.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
I just echo Councilmember Marriott's comments. The staff, the team, the citizens have done a fabulous job on getting this fine-tuned, and I agree with the words of getting it right, and time will tell. I think where we've gone is, the pendulum swings in 2 different directions sometimes, or extreme to one side to the other, and I think it's finally settled in a happy medium. So I appreciate, Rob, you spent a lot of time on this, so thank you, Rob, for all your work and hard work, and the rest of your team. So again, I applaud the staff and the citizens for pulling this together and doing a great job on it.
Ms. Ford.
Yes, I'd like to echo what my other colleagues have said so far. I've really enjoyed working on this project. It was great fun to be a part of the Citizen Advisory Committee. And I want to thank you, Rob and Ryan, for your long hours, even at 8 o'clock at night. And Lori, you all had smiles, and Carol and others, if I'm forgetting their names. Really, you're a great team, and I appreciate the flexibility that you show and the thought that goes into this process. So I enjoyed working with you. Thank you.
Very good. I see no other comments to be made. I will call for the vote. Ms. Miller.
Aye. Nice job, everybody.
Mr. Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Ms. Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Marriott,
Aye.
Ms. Simpson,
Aye, and yes, great job, everybody.
and I vote aye as well. That passes 7-0. Thank you. One last one, Mr. Marriott.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I move that Council Bill 20-013, an ordinance repealing and reenacting Section 74-31, land use fees of Article 2, Community Development Department service fees of Chapter 74, Planning and Development of the Arvada City Code, be approved on final reading, numbered 4729, and ordered published by title only.
Motions for approval? Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Sorry, Ms. Ford was an aye. Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marriott?
Aye.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That passes unanimously. You should see the smile on Mr. Devin's face. Okay, report, public comment. Kristen Rush, do we have anybody left that wishes to address us at this time?
We do not have anyone else.
Okay, thank you. City council reports?
Yeah, Mayor, this is Bob.
Yes, Bob.
I just want to say thank you to City Council and helping out a constituent who had a graduation over the weekend. I know Mr. Devin, you were there working 7 days a week, so I'm glad you were on duty. But thank you, Council, for coming to a School of Mines graduation. That was a drive-by graduation to a constituent here in Leiden Rock. And I appreciate all of us pulling together and making that day just a little bit special for a family member in our community. So thank you. And thank you, Mayor, for leading us over Saturday. Thanks.
You bet. Ms. Ford?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I had an opportunity to talk to Steve Byers a couple of weeks ago when he called me on the waste hauling effort. And I wanted to report something that he mentioned to me that I thought was really a positive comment. He had mentioned to me that he was extremely impressed with Gordon Rusink and Dawn Lesky, our new homeless navigator, and Gordon, of course, who's our manager for Community Vitality, I believe that's the title. Steve mentioned that both Gordon and Dawn were extremely fast in helping out the situation in Old Town where, because of the library closing, they were able to really come up with needed porta potties and also housing for some of the homeless. And he mentioned that in comparison to a lot of other cities, we were extremely fast and very efficient. And I really want to give a shout out to our staff, Dawn and Gordon, for doing that. I think it really made a difference, and it's very much appreciated. And then I just want to give a quick shout out to all the graduates. I wish you the best in your future, even though things look a little doom and gloom at the moment. It's going to pass, and we're just we have a lot to be thankful for, that we have a great country where we can do so many things. We have so many choices, and I wish you all the best.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I was going to actually say something similar to the graduates of 2020. Congratulations. It's a great accomplishment, both those that are graduating from elementary school and middle school and high school and college and graduate school and anything else that you could graduate from. What a year to do it in. And then I wanted to actually specifically call out a member of the Parks team, Lance Hinkle, who has done an amazing job of working with some folks in Leiden Rock on some trails. And he was specifically noted by a member of the community, and they were so appreciative of his thoughtfulness and thoroughness as we've gone through some of the struggles with keeping the trail and the washouts and things like that. So I just, Mr. Devon, I just wanted to call him out specifically, and his team. I don't know that he necessarily did it on his own, but probably had a great team supporting him. And it just, that's just evidence to me of, another evidence to me of the great team that you've got there, and I appreciate the work by everybody. So thank you.
Yeah, let me wrap this up in terms of council comments with, I want to speak about the entire team at the City of Arvada, and certainly we've got many exemplary employees who have really gone beyond the call of duty. But these have been weird times, and I know that our team at the city has been putting in very long hours. Mr. Pfeiffer, you were talking about Mr. Devon 6-7 days a week. We all know that is true, and I know that he's got many members of his management team and others who are putting in those kinds of times, and I'm sure it's taking a toll on them. And I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for what you do for this city during the good times and now during the bad times. It was, yes, in disasters, you normally have a disaster and it gets over fairly quickly, and then you start your recovery and you get to be looking at the light at the end of the tunnel. This time the recovery is going to be much longer. The actual disaster is much longer, but I know we've got a great team at the City of Arvada that's really carrying the weight for us. We certainly, as council members, get phone calls and emails, but I know that there's a lot coming directly into the city, and we all know that the flavor of some of the comments we're receiving are getting more and more frustrated, more and more angry. And we've got a great professional team that really deals with that well. And then let me close by thanking Ben and Tomas and Sherry for making me look good for the state of the city. They did a great job on putting that together. It was certainly a different way to do it this year. It's a lot harder for me to work a room when I'm in my family room and on a web camera instead of working a room. And it's not the way I like to do it, but it was very effective, I think, in terms of getting a good message across in terms of our efforts to deal with the crisis, our recovery intentions, and how the partnerships that we have in this city are really going to carry us through. So with that, Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, no comments other than to thank all of you for the support that you've provided to not only our organization, but the entire community, and also the acknowledgement of the work that was done tonight by our community and economic development work system, by Rob and Ryan and others to bring this land development code to its final conclusion with the understanding. I think it was John that said, we continue to stand it up and bring it forward to further development in the future. So thank you all for that.
Ms. Morris, do you have anything else for us this evening?
Nothing from me, Your Honor.
Very good. We stand adjourned. Everybody have a good night.